Chapter 1133. The Third Waterway, White Tiger Pass. This was the final barrier of the Third Waterway. The towering pass was built with white jade from the ancient immortal world. It was like an ancient white tiger that had been sleeping for millions of years, sleeping soundly on the surface of the water. Above and below the pass, countless experts of the foreign races were gathering their armies. It seemed like they were about to set off. On the city wall, 9 strange beasts with the cultivation of immortal emperor realm and more than 100 immortal venerables and immortal kings were plotting something. Words like battle king, crossing tribulation, and sneak attack were mentioned from time to time. Is the information reliable? Is that troublesome battle king Luo Ho really going to cross the crucial 9-5 Great Tribulation above the eastern boundary river? Could it be that this group of cunning eastern sky ants is setting up a trap? Could it be that they want to lure our main force out of the White Tiger Pass and then take the opportunity to sneak attack this pass? For dozens of years, they have used many schemes to seize this pass, a great sovereign of the foreign races said hesitantly. It's absolutely true. 10 years ago, that battle king Luo Ho was struck by my divine heavenly tribulation egg. Not only did the big and small heavenly tribulations appear one after another, but even the 9-5 Great Tribulation that he had painstakingly suppressed was also drawn out by me. This time, he really can't suppress the 9-5 Great Tribulation anymore. He, daring to cross such a great tribulation above the boundary river is simply courting death. This is a heaven-sent opportunity, we can't miss it. Another great sovereign of the foreign races sneered. We just took advantage of the time when the blood god went out to look for food and schemed against that old man Lai Jun. If we can kill that Luo Ho bastard this time, it will be a great contribution. The great divine priest will certainly reward us. There's no need to discuss further. This is a great opportunity. It's time to kill all the eastern sky ants in one fell swoop. Let's go. Following the command of the half-step quasi-saint immortal sovereign of the foreign races, the foreign races' army surged out of the White Tiger Pass like tidewater and rushed towards the Azure Sky Pass. The Third Waterway, Azure Sky Pass. This was the second last impregnable pass on the Third Waterway. The reason why it was named Azure Sky Pass was because the formation of this pass could absorb the water chi of heaven and earth, causing the sky above the pass to be filled with azure clouds all year round. The rainy season was the most common weather in Azure Sky Pass. However, in recent days, the cumulonimbus clouds in the sky above the Azure Sky Fortress had suddenly disappeared, replaced by thousands of thick tribulation clouds. From time to time, the silhouettes of golden dragons would appear, dancing in the clouds. At this moment, the entire Azure Sky Pass was solemn. Even the person in charge of the Azure Sky Pass, Emperor Eightscapes, looked worried. Among the 12 waterways of the East Boundary River, only the 3rd, 6th, and 9th waterways had yet to be conquered. Among these 3 waterways, the 6th waterway was the most heavily guarded, followed by the 9th waterway, and the 3rd waterway was slightly better. But it was only slightly better. After the series of unforeseen events in the Eastern Boundary River, the situation here was no longer optimistic. The third path was originally guarded by 2 8th Tribulation immortal emperors, Ba Jing and Tai Li. However, because a traitor like Dong Ling Immortal Wing had appeared in the third path, Great Emperor Tai Li was ambushed by several foreign race immortal emperors and died without a complete corpse. Since then, the third path was only left with 1 8th Tribulation immortal emperor, Emperor Eightscapes. Fortunately, he still had Emperor Lai Jun, Battle King Luo Ho and the 3 sons of Jianyu under his command. At that time, the situation of the third path was not beyond redemption. However, half a month ago, when Emperor Lai Jun went out for a routine patrol, he suddenly disappeared and his whereabouts were still unknown. After that, Battle King Luo Ho was also in trouble. He was actually schemed against by the foreign race and triggered the 9-5 Great Tribulation. When the bad news came one after another, Emperor Eightscapes could not help but feel anxious even with his calm state of mind. In a stone chamber in Azure Sky Pass, Battle King Luo Ho was as thin as a stick. His chi was declining and his face was filled with pain. He was trying his best to suppress the arrival of the 9-5 Great Tribulation. The 9-5 Great Tribulation was the tribulation of becoming an emperor. In the past, Battle King Luo Ho was injured by Sun Luo and fell into a deep slumber for tens of millions of years. After he woke up, Battle King Luo Ho's cultivation base skyrocketed and he already had the qualifications to become an emperor. However, because the failure rate of becoming an emperor was extremely high, Luo Ho had never been fully prepared. Thus, he did not really trigger the 9-5 Great Tribulation. He just temporarily suppressed it and hoped that he could break through after he was fully prepared. The tribulation of becoming an emperor was extremely dangerous. If he succeeded, he would advance to the next level. If he failed, he would die. There was no third possibility. Because this was a tribulation that concerned his life, anyone who wanted to break through to the immortal emperor realm would be extremely cautious. Luo Ho was no exception. According to his estimation, he needed to prepare for at least hundreds of thousands of years before he had the confidence to successfully transcend the tribulation. However, the foreign race's immortal emperor was too despicable. They took advantage of his weakness and used something called the Heavenly Tribulation Divine Egg to directly trigger the 9-5 Great Tribulation that he had been suppressing. To Luo Ho, who was not fully prepared, this was definitely a bolt from the blue. At this moment, the hundreds and thousands of tribulation clouds in the sky above Azure Sky Pass were the evidence that his 9-5 Great Tribulation was about to descend. Thinking about how the foreign race used such a vicious scheme to harm Luo Ho, the 8 heavenly emperors and the other immortal emperors of the third path were furious. However, they did not plan to express their anger in front of Luo Ho. They were afraid that it would affect Luo Ho's confidence in transcending the tribulation. Therefore, the immortal emperors could only suppress the anger in their hearts. They forced a smile and comforted Luo Ho. Fellow Taoist Luo, you only need to focus on transcending the tribulation. You don't need to worry about anything else. We will take care of everything outside. We will definitely create a perfect environment for you to transcend the tribulation. We will not let anyone disturb you. Luo Ho was very grateful to the 8 heavenly emperors and the others for comforting him. However, he still smiled bitterly and sighed. Fellow Taoist 8 heavenly emperors, fellow Taoist swordsmen, you don't need to hide it from me. How can my 9-5 Great Tribulation be undisturbed? Those foreign race spent so much effort to trigger my 9-5 Great Tribulation. They are determined to kill me. How can they let me transcend the tribulation peacefully? If I'm not wrong, the moment my 9-5 Great Tribulation descends will be the moment the foreign race invades Azure Sky Pass. They will definitely come and disturb me. The 8 heavenly emperors firmly said, with this old man here, how can we allow those evil creatures to disturb fellow Taoists' tribulation? This old man will definitely stop this matter no matter what. 8 scenic emperors said solemnly. The 8 heavenly emperors resolutely said, in the previous bloody battle, we 3 brothers owe you our lives. This time, even if we have to stake our lives, we will definitely drive away those foreign races and protect you. Luo Ho sighed. He still wanted to say something, but the 8 heavenly emperors and the others turned into rays of light and flew out of the stone room. As time passed, the heavenly tribulation red clouds above Azure Sky Pass became more and more numerous. Black astral winds whistled, and wherever they passed, the void trembled. A scorching aura spread out from the red clouds. That was the heat emitted by the sudden combustion of the golden dragon image in the red clouds. It was unknown how many of those burning dragon phantoms were, but they all emitted a supreme emperor's might. That wasn't a pressure that ordinary cultivators could withstand. Countless Eastern Sky cultivators inside Azure Sky Pass were suffocated by that supreme emperor's might. This was a rarely encountered great emperor tribulation. To be able to observe this tribulation should be the fortune of every cultivator who wasn't an immortal emperor. However, none of the Eastern Sky cultivators felt happy because of this matter. Everyone was as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Everyone knew that the foreign races would most likely launch a large-scale attack at some point in time. Lord Battle King, will he really die in the 9-5 tribulation? With our strength, will we be able to protect Lord Battle King? If something happens to the Battle King, our third waterway's strongest force will be one less. Countless eastern sky cultivators revealed worried expressions and discussed spiritedly. The 8 heavenly emperors, the Sword Mountain's 3 sons, and the other immortal emperors also revealed worried expressions. They stood on top of the city wall and looked at the tribulation clouds that covered the sky. Boom! A burning phantom dragon suddenly turned into a golden thunderbolt as thick as an adult's arm and fell from the sky. In the instant that the golden thunderbolt fell, hundreds and thousands of golden thunderbolts were born and fiercely struck down towards Azure Sky Pass. The 9-5 tribulation requires a total of 45 days of tribulation thunderbolts. The tribulation thunderbolts are stronger than the previous day. If all of them are passed, they can cut the Tao Mountain, gather the Emperor Qi, and truly become an emperor. The structure of the formation of each big pass of the Boundary River is very special. This is a formation specially used to defend against the foreign races. The defense against other things is extremely low, but against the heavenly tribulation, there is no defense at all. The 8 heavenly emperors and the others sighed again and again. If the formation of Azure Sky Pass didn't have such a special characteristic, perhaps they could rely on the formation to help Luo Ho resist the heavenly tribulation. Sure enough, after hundreds and thousands of golden thunderbolts fell on the formation light, they actually directly penetrated through the layers of formation light of Azure Sky Pass and locked onto the stone room where Luo Ho was located. Luo Ho didn't dare to be negligent. He waved his big hand, and the battle intent between the heaven and earth suddenly turned into countless big battle fire characters, colliding with the golden thunderbolts. Boom boom boom. The golden thunderbolts and the big battle fire characters collided fiercely. However, because it was only the first day of tribulation thunderbolts, its power was still weak. Therefore, none of the tribulation thunderbolts could break through Luo Ho's defense. Once the aura of the 8 heavenly sovereigns got too close to Luo Ho, who was in the center of the tribulation, the power of the heavenly tribulation would increase by several times. As a last resort, they could only stand very far away and couldn't help Luo Ho transcend the tribulation. The tribulation thunderbolts struck continuously, not giving Luo Ho any chance to breathe. On the second day, the power of the golden thunderbolts suddenly increased sharply. It was almost twice the power of the tribulation thunderbolts on the first day. On the third day, the power of the tribulation thunderbolts increased by 3 times. On the fourth day, it increased by 4 times. On the 5th day, on the 11th day, on the 19th day, on the 22nd day, Battle King Luo Ho was indeed a peerless genius. An ordinary immortal king might feel that the tribulation thunderbolts were difficult to resist on the 5th day, but Luo Ho persisted until the 22nd day before he felt that it was a little difficult. This was also because of the heavenly tribulation divine egg causing mischief in his body. If it weren't for the injury caused by the divine egg, Luo Ho might have to wait for a few more days before he felt that crossing the tribulation was strenuous. The warfire characters he used to protect his body were smashed by the tribulation thunderbolts one after another. As a last resort, the Battle King took out a congenital magic treasure and used it together with the warfire characters to resist the tribulation thunderbolts. This wasn't his own congenital magic treasure. It was the 8 heavenly sovereigns' life origin magic treasure, but it was lent to him. The selfish eastern sky cultivators couldn't lend their life origin magic treasures to outsiders to cross the tribulation. Perhaps it was because of the affection they had for each other on the battlefield, but the 8 heavenly sovereigns couldn't bear to see Luo Ho perish. Clenching his teeth, he lent his life origin magic treasure to Luo Ho. This action might destroy his life origin magic treasure. However, he couldn't care too much about it. On the 23rd day, on the 26th day, on the 28th day, the tribulation thunderbolts were getting stronger by the day. Even if he used a congenital magic treasure to block the tribulation, Battle King Luo Ho still felt that it was strenuous. Without any other choice, he used the second congenital magic treasure. It was a sword, the natal sword of the Sword King of Shu Mountain, one of the 3 sons of Sword Yu, the divine sword of Shu Nan. The 3 sons of Sword Mountain were all sword cultivators. As long as the sword existed, they lived. If the sword died, they would die. It was impossible for them to lend their natal treasured swords to outsiders. However, they still lent their natal treasured swords to their comrades. With the protection of 2 connate Dharma treasures, Luo Ho managed to hold on. The 29th day. The 32nd day. The 35th day. The strained Luo Ho used his third innate magical treasure, Sword Monarch Yellow Mountains Yellow Cloud Divine Sword. Controlling 3 connate treasures at the same time was Luo Ho's limit. Therefore, he did not borrow the Huashan Godly Sword from Huashan Sword Sovereign. This was his limit in controlling treasures. He had barely survived the heavenly tribulation. On the 39th day, Luo Ho was careless and missed a bolt of golden tribulation lightning. The golden lightning struck the stone room and caused a huge explosion. Within the smoke and dust, Luo Ho's entire body was covered in blood. He walked out from the rubble, forcefully swallowing the sweet blood in his throat as he continued to control his magic treasures to resist the heavenly tribulation. Just one bolt of the heavenly tribulation had actually injured his physical body, which was stronger than many immortal emperors. This tribulation lightning was so terrifying, he was beginning to tire. His magic power was beginning to run out. More and more tribulation lightning began to pass through his defenses and strike his body. He roared loudly and transformed into his sorcerer god true body. Using his true body and his magic treasures, he forcibly resisted the tribulation lightning that filled the sky. The 40th day. The 41st day. The 42nd day. Injuries began to appear on Luo Ho's sorcerer god true body. His flesh and blood were split open by the golden tribulation lightning, and his vitality was rapidly flowing away under the attack of the heavenly tribulation. No one dared to interfere with Luo Ho's heavenly tribulation to help him. Doing so would only make Luo Ho's heavenly tribulation even more terrifying and even more impossible to cross. The crowd of Eastern Sky cultivators could only silently watch Luo Ho cross the heavenly tribulation, silently praying that Luo Ho could successfully cross the heavenly tribulation. The 43rd day. The 44th day. Luo Ho's 9-5 Great Tribulation was already nearing its end. The power of the heavenly tribulation suddenly became extremely berserk. It was actually 100 times more than the original. Under the attack of the heavenly tribulation, Luo Ho's injuries were on the verge of death, and his breathing was weak. He had prepared too little for this 9-5 tribulation. It was very likely that he would not be able to last until the 45th day. This was the result of crossing the 9-5 tribulation without any preparation. Luo Ho's chances of successfully crossing the heavenly tribulation were already very slim. But those strange races still didn't intend to let him off. These past few years, the strange races experts had suffered many losses at the hands of Battle King Luo Ho. Today was the perfect opportunity for them to properly repay Luo Ho. You seem to be crossing the heavenly tribulation with great difficulty. Do you want us to give you a hand? Amidst the sound of thunder that filled the sky, there was suddenly a mocking voice that tore apart the heaven and earth and transmitted into the ears of every Eastern Sky cultivator. The complexions of all the Eastern Sky cultivators changed. Under their nervous gazes, the silhouettes of countless giant beasts appeared in the distance of Azure Sky Pass and unceasingly approached. Thunder amplification technique. In the distance, it was unknown which strange race expert had launched a divine ability. The power of the tribulation lightning in the sky above Azure Sky Pass suddenly increased by a lot. Damn it! Those strange races want to strengthen the power of the heavenly tribulation and strangle fellow Taoist Luo Ho on the 44th day. We must stop them. The complexions of the 8 scenery emperors and the others changed dramatically. They wanted to stop the operation of the thunder amplification technique, but because they were participating in the heavenly tribulation, it made the heavenly tribulation even more powerful than before. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Even if they wanted to help Luo Ho, they couldn't interfere. Those strange race immortal emperors were getting closer and closer to Azure Sky Pass. Suddenly, it was unknown which strange race expert launched a divine ability towards the tribulation clouds in the sky. Calamity nurturing technique. The power of the tribulation lightning had increased by a lot. See sky thunder nurturing technique. The power of the tribulation was still increasing. Great freedom devil god thunder. The power of the tribulation had been artificially increased to an undefeatable level. Muffled groans came from Luo Ho's mouth, and his eyes were filled with unimaginable anger. Even if no one interfered, he didn't have the confidence to endure all the tribulation lightning for the 45th day. At this moment, with the strange races causing trouble, he would definitely die on the 44th day. Unwilling. If these strange races had killed him on the battlefield, he would have been wholeheartedly convinced. However, they unexpectedly used this kind of despicable method to plot against him. He was unwilling. Fellow Taoist Luo, be careful. It's the Yidao extinguishing thunder infant. Those bastards actually took out this thing. All of a sudden, the expressions of the 8 scenery emperors and the others changed drastically because a golden lightning infant was suddenly born in the deepest part of the tribulation clouds. It was an incomparably gigantic infant with dragon horns, a dragon tail and dragon scales. Its eyes did not have the scara and its smile was frightening. It was a lightning infant that was born from the purest power of the 9-5 tribulation lightning. It was a strange phenomenon of tribulation lightning that would only appear when a cultivator who was not accepted by heaven and earth became an emperor. Battle King Luo Ho was not Ning Fan. He was not rejected by heaven and earth. His 9-5 tribulation would not have such a ferocious phenomenon. However, those strange races inherited their inheritance from the Z-Wei immortal domain. They had all kinds of mysterious methods that could greatly increase the power of their enemies' heavenly tribulations. The power of Battle King Luo Ho's 9-5 tribulation had been artificially increased. When it was increased to a certain extent, it even produced the legendary Tao Destruction Lightning Infant. Not only the 8 scenery emperors and the others were shocked, but even the immortal emperors of the strange races who did this were also a little surprised. It was also their first time seeing the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant. They did not expect that after using dozens of secret techniques that could harm the heavenly tribulations, they would actually produce such a terrifying thing. This is great. It was no longer comparable to them who continued to interfere with Luo Ho's tribulation. According to the legends, a Tao Destruction Lightning Infant had the power to instantly destroy 10 immortal emperors. Next, this Tao Destruction Lightning Infant would only need a single attack to completely kill Luo Ho. If the aftermath of the attack spreads, it might even engulf the entire Azure Sky Fortress, causing countless casualties among the Eastern Heavens cultivators. It's actually a Tao Destruction Lightning Infant. This is something that even I, a half-step quasi-sage realm cultivator, do not dare to face head-on. That Luo Ho bastard will definitely die. It seems like we are going to make a contribution again. The third group will lose another Eastern Heaven Immortal Emperor. Great Divine Priest will definitely reward us. Rumble. The Tao Destruction Lightning Infant sat under the tribulation cloud. Its chubby little hand grabbed downwards and a golden sea of lightning instantly drowned the entire Azure Sky Fortress. Under the leadership of the 8 scenery emperors and the others, countless Eastern Heaven cultivators tried their best to resist the descent of the Sea of Lightning. Unfortunately, they were powerless to stop it. At this moment, Ning Fan, who was hiding at the side and secretly guarding Luo Ho, tore open the void and revealed himself. He held up a small sapling in the air and ordered, "Wondrous tree of 7 treasures. With the power that I bestow upon you, wipe out all the lightning in this place." Swish, swish, swished at the 8 scenery emperors, the 3 sons of Sword Mountain, Luo Ho and countless Eastern Heaven cultivators could not resist the Tao Destruction Lightning Ocean even after joining hands. However, after the Tree of 7 Treasures brushed against it hundreds and thousands of times, it exploded with a loud bang. The broken lightning power scattered in all directions and vanished in the air. Ning Fan, who was dressed in white robes, appeared in everyone's line of sight. He stood in midair and looked down at the experts of the foreign races as if they were ants. There was no disdain in his eyes. However, when the experts of the foreign races looked into his eyes, they all felt a sense of inferiority that came from nowhere. That kind of despicableness was not just because of the difference in their cultivation levels. It was also because of the difference in species. It was not the difference between a god and a human. Instead, it was the Father God who was more noble than ordinary gods, who was looking down on all living beings. His gaze shifted to Luo Ho. However, he smiled peacefully just like in the past. Brother Luo, don't worry. With me here, no one can disturb your heavenly tribulation. Not good. It's the white-robed Yama. The moment they saw Ningfan's appearance, countless experts of the foreign races were so shocked that their faces turned pale. Their imposing aura collapsed. This devil actually came. Moreover, he actually blocked the Dao destruction attack that even a half-step quasi-saint realm expert would find hard to resist. How is this possible? Even a half-step quasi-saint realm expert could not do this. Are they dreaming? Wait, when did the white-robed Yama advance to the immortal king realm? It has only been a few years. Why did this young man's cultivation base undergo such a tremendous change? Chapter 1134. In theory, a few decades was definitely not enough for an immortal venerable to cultivate to the immortal king realm. Unless one used some kind of inheritance method that damaged one's foundation, or borrowed some kind of time-lapsing artifact, they would not be able to do so. Could it be that the white-robed king of hell had actually used such a tiger and wolf method to forcefully raise his cultivation? No, that's not right. It was not the enlightenment technique. It wasn't a time treasure either. That legend was actually true. The legend of the 16-heart pill was true. This boy has a trace of dragon horse aura on him. Are you kidding me? This child actually managed to refine the 16 dragon horse crown princes into 16 heart pills in just a few decades? That's a legendary pill. Does it really exist? How dare he? Doesn't he know that the Dragon Horse clan is the Blood God's exclusive property? How dare he eat Lord Blood God's food? Aren't you afraid of being cursed by the Blood God? I never thought that the 16-heart pill could really allow a cultivator to become a celestial king. This is too scary. This white-robed Yama was already extremely powerful when he was still a celestial sovereign. Now that he has become a celestial king with the help of the 16-heart pill, won't he be even more difficult to deal with? Don't be afraid. He acted on his own and interfered with the heavenly tribulation. His aura has already been locked on by the heavenly tribulation, so there's no need for us to act. Let's see how he'll be killed by the Dao Annihilation Thunder Nascent. Even though Ningfan was alone, he had caused countless experts of the foreign races to exclaim in shock and chaos. His presence was too strong, so strong that no one dared to ignore his existence. On the other hand, the entire Azure Sky Pass was filled with thunderous cheers because of Ningfan's sudden appearance. To the foreign races, Ningfan might be the most troublesome enemy. However, to the cultivators of the Eastern Heaven, he was the most reliable helper. Brother Ning, it's fortunate that you came in time. Otherwise, I would have already died under the heavenly tribulation. Luo Ho's eyes were filled with complicated emotions. He looked at Ningfan, who was high up in the sky. His heart was filled with gratitude and shame at the same time. At the same time, he was astonished by how fast Ningfan's cultivation base improved. He owed Ningfan his life. Until today, he still had not found a suitable opportunity to repay Ningfan. Instead, he was saved by Ningfan again. He could not help but feel deeply ashamed. If it wasn't for Ningfan, he would certainly die in the 9-5 Great Tribulation this time. It seemed like he owed Ningfan another life. It's just a small matter. Brother Luo, you don't have to worry about it. If you didn't fall into the trap of the foreign races, you wouldn't have been killed by the 9-5 Tribulation without my help. Ningfan comforted her. Then, his eyes turned towards the Dao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul, and his expression turned solemn. Fellow Taoist Ning, be careful. The infant sitting on the tribulation cloud was the legendary Dao Annihilation Thunder Nascent that could kill immortal emperors with a wave of its hand. Although you've blocked the first round of the Nascent Soul's tribulation, you've also interfered with the heavenly tribulation, causing its power to skyrocket. The next attack of the Dao Annihilation Lightning Nascent will definitely not be easily blocked by you again. Quickly descend into the pass. We will join forces to block the second round of attacks from this nascent soul. The 8 Scenery Emperors and the others were pleasantly surprised by Ningfan's arrival. At the same time, they reminded Ningfan, worried that something might happen to him in the upcoming lightning tribulation. Ning Fan, however, shook his head gently and rejected their kind intentions. He said calmly, "It doesn't matter. This Tao extermination lightning nascent soul is still within my ability. I alone am enough to destroy it. Don't make a move, lest you get heavily injured." What an arrogant tone. He actually wanted to fight the legendary Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul alone. However, the 8 scenery emperors and the others were not narrow-minded people. They knew that Ning Fan did not want them to intervene because it was for their own good. The Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul was just too terrifying. Legend has it that there were once 10 immortal emperors who coveted the enormous lightning power of the Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul. They joined forces to attack it, but in the end, 6 of them died and 4 of them were injured. They were worried about Ning Fan's safety and were willing to fight alongside him to fight against the Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul. Of course, it would be better if Ning Fan had a way to deal with this nascent soul himself, and they did not need to do anything. They did not have the confidence to protect themselves in the fight against the Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul. Even though they did not think that Ning Fan, who was at the Immortal King realm, could kill the legendary Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul. Perhaps Ning Fan had a way to restrain the Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul. That was why he was so confident. Rumble. The Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul attacked again. More golden lightning seas were summoned by its chubby little hand. With monstrous anger, it aimed at Ning Fan and struck him. How could it not be angry? One should know that every time a Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul like him appeared, even a quasi-saint realm expert would have to be wary of it. They would not dare to go against the will of the heavenly tribulation. However, this young man was really bold. He actually dared to stop his tribulation with a mere immortal king realm cultivation base. This was the first crime. This young man even carried an aura that was not tolerated by heaven and earth. It made him feel displeased and unbearable killing intent. This was the second crime. This young man should be killed without mercy. The Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul's expression was filled with disdain. It firmly believed that the reason why Ning Fan could block its first round of attack was because it did not use its full strength. However, it decided to use 50% of its strength for the second round of attack. This amount of strength was enough to kill an 8 tribulation immortal emperor in a single blow. It was certainly more than enough to kill an immortal king realm expert. The sea of lightning blasted towards Ning Fan, turning into countless illusions of the ancient immortal watchtowers. It was as if the entire ancient heaven and earth was crashing towards Ning Fan with a mighty force that could instantly kill an 8 tribulation immortal emperor. Everyone was shocked by the second round of attack of the Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul. Even the half-step quasi-sage realm experts of the foreign races were secretly shocked. They did not have the confidence to block this attack by themselves. Ning Fan, however, remained expressionless. He calmly controlled the Tree of 7 Wonders and sent out hundreds and thousands of attacks towards the sky. Logically speaking, this Tree of 7 Wonders had yet to advance to the innate grade. Even if it was a special type of magic treasure, it could only display the power of a low-grade innate grade magic treasure at most. However, for some unknown reason, the power of this wood element magic treasure actually rose to another level when it was in Ning Fan's hands. Every time it was used, its power was not any weaker than a mid-grade innate magic treasure. All the spectators were shocked. They could not understand how Ning Fan obtained another mid-grade innate magic treasure. This young man really has too many treasures, doesn't he? Under everyone's astonished gazes, the second round of attack of the Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul was destroyed by Ning Fan's Tree of 7 Wonders without any mercy. Moreover, at the moment when he destroyed the second round of attack of the Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul, Ning Fan pointed a finger at the sky. A massive lightning diagram appeared between heaven and earth and swept towards the Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul, trying to take it away. This lightning diagram was none other than the Tai Su lightning diagram. The Tao annihilation lightning nascent soul was so angry that it bared its teeth. It could tell that Ning Fan's lightning diagram had the ability to counter lightning. However, there was a limit to it. It was not enough to restrain it at all. Ning Fan actually used such a despicable method to deal with it. He was simply looking down on its dignity. The Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul became even more enraged. He suddenly pointed his chubby little hand at the tip of his finger. All the lightning power of heaven and earth gathered at the tip of his finger. With a single finger, he crushed the Tai Su lightning diagram. However, even though the Tai Su lightning diagram was broken, it was not destroyed because of it. Among the broken pieces of the lightning diagram, there were traces of the Tao law of wood that were connected to each other, as if they were sewn together by a needle and thread. Then, as soon as Ning Fan activated his Tao law of wood, the broken lightning diagram was instantly repaired. The vitality of the plants in heaven and earth, on the other hand, strangely decreased a little. It was nowhere to be found, as if it was sucked away by Ning Fan in an instant. Gua? The Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul was stunned. It could not figure out why its full-force attack could not destroy the seemingly weak Tai Su lightning diagram. Of course, Ning Fan would not explain the reason to the Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul. Seeing that the Tai Su lightning diagram failed to hit its target, Ning Fan smiled faintly and praised the Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul. It's indeed a legendary item. It doesn't seem possible for me to capture you directly with just a small Tao of this lightning diagram. As soon as his words fell, countless experts of the Eastern Heaven and foreign races inside and outside the Azure Sky Pass sucked in a cold breath. They were dumbfounded by Ning Fan's arrogance. Ning Fan actually wanted to capture the Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul. The cultivators of the Eastern Heaven did not say much. They had always been very confident in Ning Fan. On the other hand, the members of the foreign races had already mocked Ning Fan for overestimating himself. Does this white-robed Yama think that he's a quasi-saint? He actually wants to capture the Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul. What a joke! Even a quasi-saint might not be able to do it. Besides, even if he can do it, no quasi-saint would be foolish enough to take the risk of offending the heavenly prestige and capture the Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul. Since the Dharma ending period, the Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Souls have not been replenished by the power of the third step plane. Thus, their numbers could not increase. There are only a few of them left. In the entire heavenly Tao of the Eastern Heaven, there are only 3 or 4 Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Souls left. This young man is too greedy. He actually wants to capture one of them. He will definitely suffer the consequences and die in the hands of the Lightning Nascent Soul. Rumble. Amidst the mocking laughter of the experts of the foreign races, the Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul waved its lightning over and over again, shattering the Tai Su lightning diagram again and again. However, it still could not truly destroy the diagram. No matter how many times it was shattered, the Tai Su lightning diagram could repair itself and return to its original state. Gradually, some of the experts of the foreign races noticed the strangeness of the Tai Su lightning diagram and were shocked. The power that Ning Fan used to repair the Tai Su lightning diagram was actually the extremely pure power of the wood palm position. It was not the half-baked palm position but the true palm position. Why can an immortal king realm master control the void palm position? Could it be that this young man has already attained the void palm position? He actually succeeded in controlling the void palm position with his immortal king realm cultivation base. This is absolutely impossible. The members of the foreign races gasped. This is the complete wood palm position. It's completely different from the half-step palm position of the Alliance Master. Wood is the source of life force. Cultivators who possess the complete wood palm position will have unimaginably terrifying recovery speed, be it their divine abilities or physical body. No wonder fellow Taoist Ning's lightning diagram could be repaired again and again. The 8 scenery god emperors and the others also exclaimed in surprise. Ning Fan did not bother to pay attention to the exclamations of the people around him. His eyes were only focused on the Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul. Seeing that the Tai Su lightning diagram could not do anything to the Tao Annihilation Lightning Nascent Soul, Ning Fan suddenly activated the cross-shaped halos. Like an arrow that has just left the bow, he directly flew towards the Tao Annihilation Lightning nascent soul. As soon as they met, he threw out tens of ancient Devil Mountain breaking strikes. The Tao Annihilation Lightning nascent soul was feeling gloomy when it realized that it could not completely destroy the Tai Su lightning diagram. When it saw Ning Fan rushing towards it, it immediately snorted disdainfully. It did not bother to block Ning Fan's ancient Devil Mountain breaking strikes at all. Rumble. With Ning Fan's current cultivation base, the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strikes that he performed with all his might was extremely powerful. Even if it was just the beginning, it was enough to kill a 5 Tribulation Immortal King with a single punch. Tens of such heavy punches landed on the gigantic body of the Tao Annihilation Lightning nascent soul. However, it only produced layers of lightning sparks. It could not hurt the origin of the Tao Annihilation Lightning nascent soul at all. Even with Ning Fan's personality, he could not help but feel a little surprised. It's indeed a legendary item. It actually has such a strong defense. While Ning Fan was feeling surprised, he suddenly saw the eyes of the Tao Annihilation Lightning nascent soul shoot out 2 rays of divine light. The 2 rays of divine light were condensed from lightning power at the Tao source realm. For some reason, they carried a trace of primal chaos chi. When the attack landed, it easily penetrated Ning Fan's divine spirit body, leaving 2 hideous bloody holes on his chest and abdomen. There was also a trace of lightning that carried primal chaos chi that invaded his body through the wounds, wreaking havoc and destroying it. Primal chaos lightning, huh? It does have some tricks up its sleeves. Unfortunately, the primal chaos chi is too little. It is far from enough to injure me severely. Repair. Ning Fan silently circulated the power of the Wood Sovereign realm. Countless tree roots suddenly emerged from the 2 bloody holes on his chest and abdomen. They intertwined with each other and filled up his wounds. Those roots then turned into his flesh and skin, allowing his flesh to regenerate at an extremely fast speed. In just the blink of an eye, the injuries that Ning Fan suffered from the Tao Annihilation Lightning nascent soul were completely healed. With the power of the Wood Sovereign realm and other healing methods, Ning Fan was able to heal them in one go. Among them, Ning Fan used the power of the Wood Sovereign realm. At the bottom of the realm river, the life force of countless aquatic plants was extracted by Ning Fan without anyone noticing. Gua? The Tao Annihilation Lightning nascent soul became even more puzzled. It could not understand why Ning Fan was still not hurt even a little after using the primal chaos lightning. Ning Fan was clearly just a little immortal king. Why did he have such strange abilities? Rumble. Ning Fan threw out another series of ancient Devil Mountain breaking strikes. The force of his punches became stronger and faster, like a violent storm. In just 10 breaths, he had already hit 3,000 consecutive strikes. This was the first time he was able to unleash 3,000 consecutive strikes without activating his ancient true body or the God-vanquishing shield. One had to know that the rebounding force of the 3,000 ancient demons breaking the mountain strike was extremely terrifying. If it was before, he wouldn't have been able to do this and would have been killed by his own fist. But things were different now. After the refinement of tens of millions of immeasurable pills, both his physical body and magic power had undergone a tremendous change. In addition to the recovery power of the wood palm seat, even if he did not activate his eternal true body, he could still display the 3,000 ancient Devil's Mountain breaking strike without sustaining any injuries. If he activated his primordial true body, he would have the confidence to try even 4, 5, or even 6,000 ancient Devil Mountain crushing strikes. It was the sound of the Tao Annihilation Thunder nascent soul coughing blood. He coughed out a mouthful of lightning blood with a sizzling sound. He was sent flying away by Ning Fan's 3,000 ancient Devil's Mountain breaking strike. His expression changed drastically. He was astonished, he was shaken. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't understand why this puny little immortal king in front of him could be so powerful with each punch. The formless fist force was like a connected mountain range. After 3,000 consecutive strikes, it was actually enough to injure his origin. This was the first time in his life that he had been injured by a mere celestial king. This young man is too heaven-defying. Gua gua gua. Who are you? Gua 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 gua. Do you want to go against heaven? Gua 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 gua. Quickly step back and I will spare your life. No one could understand what the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant was saying. Only Ning Fan could understand it. However, he was disdainful to give the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant any response. Going against heaven? Is it very scary? The moment he stepped into the Divine Spirit Tao, heaven and earth could no longer tolerate him, alright? He could no longer turn back. Using the power of the wood palm seat, Ning Fan healed the wounds caused by the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant. He had no choice but to admit that this Tao Destruction Lightning Infant was rather impressive. Even the 3,000 Ancient Devil's mountain-crushing strike could not destroy it. Thus, he had no choice but to use all of his abilities and transform into his eternal true body. A golden flame giant that looked down upon the world appeared between heaven and earth. The 3,000 Ancient Devil's mountain-crushing strike was Ning Fan's current limit without using his true body. However, if he uses his true body, this number of consecutive strikes was far from his limit. Qi. When the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant saw Ning Fan's Qi skyrocketing, it was shocked. Divine light shot out from its eyes again and it attacked Ning Fan with the Primal Chaos Lightning. This time, however, its Primal Chaos Lightning Infant could no longer break through Ning Fan's physical defense. The evolution of his crippled Divine Spirit body and the birth of his Divine Spark had greatly improved Ning Fan's defense. With his eternal true body activated, even a first-level quasi-saint would find it difficult to injure Ning Fan. The attack of the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant could not even break through the golden flames on the surface of Ning Fan's body. Boom. Ning Fan continued to use his previous fist force to strike down his fist light like a rainstorm. The rain of golden flames could destroy heaven and earth, causing the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant to flee in all directions. How would the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant dare to take the 3,000 Ancient Devil Mountain Crushing strike head-on? It had no choice but to run and evade. However, the entire heaven and earth had been sealed by Ning Fan's fist light. It was easier said than done to evade all of them. Even if it tried to evade, it could only avoid most of the fist light and would still be hit by a small portion of them. What terrified the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant even more was that Ning Fan's combo was still rising. Is the 3,000 combo not his limit yet? The 4,000 combo? The 5,000 combo? The 6,000 combo? Ning Fan still had yet to reach the limit of his eternal true body. However, the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant could no longer withstand Ning Fan's 6,000 combo of fist light. Finally, it let out a miserable shriek. Its origin was severely damaged and its gigantic body was destroyed by Ning Fan. As long as his will was not destroyed, he would not die even if his body was destroyed. He forcefully turned his gigantic body into billions of broken lightning spirits and scattered in all directions. As long as one of his lightning spirits could escape back to the heavenly Tao, he could be reborn under the nourishment of the heavenly Tao. However, how could Ning Fan give the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant the chance to escape? It took him a lot of effort to destroy this troublesome lightning infant. How could he not collect some spoils of war? This Tao Destruction Lightning Infant was much stronger than the ancestral lightning sparrow that he captured in the past. If he uses it as the second spirit of the Tai Su lightning diagram, it would definitely increase the power of the diagram greatly. The Tao Destruction Lightning Infant could only be found by luck. It would be such a pity if he did not capture it. Freeze. Ning Fan pointed at the sky. The billions of broken lightning spirits in the sky were all stopped by his finger. None of them could escape. Capture. Amidst the fearful croaking sounds, Ning Fan unleashed the full power of the Tai Su lightning diagram. It turned into a gigantic cloud that blotted out the sky and devoured all the broken lightning spirits. After devouring all of the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant's clones, Ning Fan was not done yet. He even devoured all the tribulation lightning power of the 9-5 tribulation clouds into the Tai Su lightning diagram, causing the tribulation clouds to collapse in large areas. The 9-5 tribulation was a heavenly tribulation as well as a form of fortune. Even though the cultivators who become emperors have a slim chance of surviving this tribulation, They could also gain a lot of insights during the process of resisting the tribulation lightning, which would be beneficial to their future cultivation in the Emperor realm. That was why Ning Fan did not show himself at the first moment, as it would affect Luo Ho's comprehension of the tribulation. It was only until Luo Ho's heavenly tribulation was disrupted by someone that he showed up and helped him to prevent him from dying tragically under the heavenly tribulation. In the sky, hundreds and thousands of tribulation clouds collapsed one after another. As if he was annoyed by the slow speed of the tribulation clouds' collapse, Ning Fan blew another mouthful of air. It turned into a peerless astral wind and blew away even more tribulation clouds. In the end, the heavenly tribulation subsided. From the time he showed up to the time when the heavenly tribulation subsided, it did not even take the time for an incense stick to burn. In just the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant and the 9-5 Great Tribulation that everyone revered were all eliminated by him alone. For a moment, the entire place fell into dead silence. Only the peerless astral wind that Ning Fan casually blew out was still sweeping across heaven and earth. All the members of the foreign races who mocked Ning Fan's arrogance just now had their faces slapped. None of them expected that the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant, which even a quasi-saint realm expert was afraid of, was actually captured by Ning Fan so easily. He is definitely a madman. Let's not talk about whether the other quasi-saints have the ability to do so. Doesn't this young man know that by capturing the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant, he will become a thorn in the side of the last day's heavenly Tao and will no longer be tolerated by heaven and earth? Brother Luo, the 9-5 lightning tribulation has passed. However, as far as I know, it seems like you still need to go into seclusion for another 45 days after the tribulation to comprehend the opportunity of the Tao Execution Mountain. Only then can you truly become an emperor. Brother Luo, quickly comprehend the mysteries of the Tao Execution Mountain. Just leave these foreign races to us. Fellow Taoist Ba Jing and the Three-Sword Sovereigns, are you willing to join hands with Ning Fan and eliminate all the foreign races outside the pass? Of course we want to. Without fellow Taoist Ning, we definitely wouldn't dare to take the initiative to attack these foreign races. But now, we are very willing to help fellow Taoist Ning and teach these foreign races a bloody lesson. Not daring to be careless, the 4 immortal emperors responded to Ning Fan's invitation one after another. As a matter of fact, Ning Fan's current cultivation base had skyrocketed. Even if he has to fight against 9 of them alone, he was confident that he could defeat all of them. It was not difficult to defeat them. What was difficult was to kill all of the enemy's immortal emperors without letting any of them escape. If the immortal emperors wholeheartedly run away, it would be troublesome for Ning Fan to chase after them one by one. Since he had 4 immortal emperors as his helpers, why wouldn't he use them? With these 4 immortal emperors standing guard at the side, it would not be easy for the foreign race's immortal emperors to escape. Even though the Eastern Heaven immortal emperors were weak, they were not completely useless. Qi Ning Fan's giant golden flame body took the lead and charged into the army of foreign races. Each time he used the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike, tens of thousands of experts of the foreign races would be blasted into a rain of blood. 3/6 Tribulation immortal emperors from the Jade Shell clan, the Crab Soldier clan and the Rocky Reef clan surrounded Ning Fan, trying to stop him from slaughtering the foreign races. Ning Fan unleashed his full magic power. He threw out 3 punches of the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike that had achieved 6,000 combo attacks. With just a single blow, he destroyed the physical bodies of the 3 immortal emperors. Then, he used the divine refining cauldron to capture the demon souls of the 3 immortal emperors and refine them to death. He killed 3 of the 3 immortal emperors in just a single blow. This could no longer be considered as a battle against immortal emperors. It was completely a one-sided massacre. The other immortal emperors who wanted to attack Ning Fan immediately broke out in cold sweat. It was as if they were nailed to the ground. None of them dared to attack Ning Fan anymore. As immortal emperors, they could not help but tremble. They were terrified. The scene of Ning Fan killing the 3 immortal emperors with just a raise of his hand was too terrifying. It made them shiver. How can he kill immortal emperors like slaughtering dogs? This is impossible. He isn't an ancient immortal king. We, the immortal emperors of the realm river, aren't trash either. Devil. He's a devil. We are no match for him. Even a quasi-saint realm expert would not be able to withstand his 6,000 consecutive attacks. That kind of ability only requires 7 to 8 punches to deplete all of our magic power. Why can he throw a few thousand punches without losing any magic power? Is his magic power really limitless? Is it the same as Lord Blood God? With him around, it's impossible for us to take over the Azure Sky Pass. If we run any slower, we will be killed by the white-robed Yama. Quickly retreat to the White Tiger Pass. All of a sudden, the morale of all the high-level experts of the foreign races collapsed. Countless of them scrambled to escape. Even immortal emperors were no match for Ning Fan. Any of the foreign races who had a little bit of spiritual intelligence was scared out of their wits by Ning Fan. How could they have the courage to continue fighting? Only those low-grade foreign races who had low spiritual intelligence and were indifferent to life and death could continue to attack Ning Fan without fear of death. However, the attacking speed of these low-grade foreign races was too slow. No matter how many of their attacks were, they could not hit Ning Fan at all. Since they could not keep up with Ning Fan's speed, their attacks were useless. Ning Fan's consecutive attacks continued to rise, reaching 7,000 and then 8,000. The 8,000 Ancient Devil's Mountain Breaking Strike was about to reach the limit of Ning Fan's eternal true body. The power of the Ancient Devil's Mountain Breaking Strike was not any weaker than the full-powered attack of a first-level quasi-saint. More and more low-grade foreign races were slaughtered by Ning Fan. Fresh blood dyed the surface of the river red. Another unlucky immortal emperor had his physical body destroyed and his demon soul refined to death. Ning Fan's aura force was too strong. It was so strong that even the half-step quasi-saint realm expert with the highest cultivation base in this place could not help but break out in cold sweat when facing Ning Fan, who was in a killing frenzy. Is this the magic power and aura force that a mere immortal king could possess? Why did he feel that Ning Fan's magic power and chi were much stronger than many first-level quasi-saints? This young man actually suppressed him to the point that he could not breathe with just the chi of his magic power. One should know that he was a half-step quasi-saint realm expert. How could his magic power be weaker than an immortal king's? This was just too ridiculous. Facing Ning Fan, who was charging at him in a menacing manner, this half-step quasi-saint realm expert instinctively wanted to avoid him. However, he remembered the great reward that the great divine priest had promised him and the Z-Way must-kill order. As long as I kill this young man, I will be able to obtain the opportunity to become a quasi-saint realm expert. Even though he had been a half-step quasi-saint realm expert for many years, he still could not take that final step with his own strength. If I can kill Ning Fan, his breathing suddenly began to quicken. His heart was filled with greed. He felt an unprecedented excitement and thrill. He wanted to kill Ning Fan and pave his path to the quasi-saint realm with Ning Fan's blood and bones. I'm going all out. Myriad star formation, open. As soon as he uttered a word, 10,000 zhang rays of starlight spread out from his body, engulfing the entire Azure Sky Fortress. His immortal name was Wan Xingzi. He was a half-step quasi-saint realm expert of the Myriad Star Clan. The Myriad Star Clan was not good at fights of magical power. His combat strength could only be considered average among the other half-step quasi-saints. However, he had a bloodline-inherited ability that was highly praised by the Myriad clans in the World River. It was the Myriad Star Formation. It was a supreme immortal technique that the progenitor of the Myriad Star Clan had comprehended from immortal sovereign Z-Way. After the progenitor's death, this technique was not passed down on the surface. However, it was still passed down in the depths of the bloodline of every member of the Myriad Star Clan. It was just that very few of them could truly awaken this immortal technique. As for him, Wan Xingzi, he was one of the few lucky ones who was fortunate enough to awaken the Myriad Star Formation. By using meteorites as stars, it could illuminate the void. By using immemorial stars, it could illuminate samsara. By using living beings as stars, it could illuminate Z-Way. Myriad stars returned to purple. The immortal sovereign's finger. Wan Xingzi's eyes became filled with madness. Under the illumination of his starlight, the physical bodies of countless low-grade foreign races exploded. Their life force entered his starlight, dyeing it purplish red. Those immortal venerables and immortal kings who wanted to escape were attracted by his star power. Their eyes immediately became blank. Each of them was like a marionette, moving in a daze in the orbit of his star power. Their life force kept entering the star power. Other than Wan Xingzi, there were 4 other immortal emperors from the other clans. All of them were scared out of their wits by Ning Fan. Initially, these immortal emperors also had the intention to retreat. However, when Wan Xingzi activated the myriad star formation, their eyes also became blank. Being guided by the star power, each of them was like a walking corpse, flying in a daze around the orbit of the star power that Wan Xingzi drew. The scenery of heaven and earth changed completely at this moment. What entered Ning Fan's eyes was no longer the azure sky pass nor the realm river. The sky disappeared, the pass disappeared, the river disappeared, and the countless foreign races disappeared. The 8 scenery emperors who were hunting the low-grade foreign races behind him also disappeared. There was only one scenery left in his eyes. What entered his eyes were countless large planets moving along the orbit of the immortal domain. An ancient starry sky map of the immortal domain appeared in front of him. It gave off an incomparably dangerous chi, as if a supreme being was looking at him through this ancient starry sky map. Ha! What bullshit, White Robe Yama! Didn't you still fall into my myriad star formation? No matter how high your cultivation base is, it will all go to waste once you enter this formation. You're dead for sure. Just wait for me to derive the immortal sovereign's finger and destroy your endless samsara. In the starry sky, Wan Xingzi's arrogant laughter reverberated continuously. Each time his laughter echoed, there would be boundless immortal power vibrating. Countless scenes of samsara that were related to Ning Fan were faintly discernible in the starry sky. Ning Fan felt a sharp pain in his sea of consciousness. At this moment, it was as if an ancient, cold finger that carried supreme majesty, disdain, and coldness had opened his samsara. Chapter 1135. Ning Fan's sea of consciousness was in extreme pain. Countless broken images of his reincarnation flickered in and out of existence in the star formation. There were also countless noisy devil noises coming from all directions of the star formation. Each of them was like a clap of thunder, exploding in Ning Fan's ears. Ning Fan felt his ears buzzing nonstop. In just a few breaths, his eardrums were already injured by the devil's sounds. Fresh blood flowed out from his ears. Once I defy the purple myrtle Tao, I will be killed by 10,000 stars after my star is destroyed. Unite the northern wilderness for thousands of years. Unite the northern wilderness for thousands of years. The devil voice that reverberated in Ning Fan's ears only consisted of these few sentences. However, because the person who uttered those words seemed to possess a supreme cultivation base, the devil voice was much more terrifying than the attacks of most quasi-saints. It easily injured Ning Fan. Whose voice was that? It actually gave Ning Fan an unparalleled aura of the 4th step. Once I defy the purple myrtle Tao, I will be killed by 10,000 stars after my star is destroyed. Unite the northern wilderness for thousands of years. Unite the northern wilderness for thousands of years. Puff! That voice grew louder and louder. It was as if a 4th step immortal sovereign was traversing through endless time and space to directly suppress Ning Fan. When the pressure reached its limit, Ning Fan spurted out a mouthful of blood. In the end, he was still injured. That injury couldn't be healed even with the power of the Wood Realm Master. However, this mouthful of blood and these injuries had stimulated his ferocious nature. Ning Fan attached great importance to Wan Xingzi, who was able to injure him. He thought to himself, this man is indeed worthy of being a half-step quasi-sage realm expert. He is indeed not on the same level as the 4-6 tribulation immortal emperors whom I have killed. He could not afford to be careless when facing this person. Currently, my strength is not comparable to a quasi-sage. I'm roughly equivalent to a peak existence of a half-step quasi-sage. For some reason, this person's divine power could activate a trace of a fourth-step expert's celestial power. Although it was only a trace, it was more than enough to attack a second-step cultivator. Today's battle is a proof. Sure enough, a half-step quasi-sage is not someone I can defeat unscathed. Your fourth-step celestial force is powerful, but you don't know that I also have such power. Ning Fan sneered. He was laughing because the myriad star array contained fourth-step immortal power. Could it be more than the god-exterminating shield?
What?
Ning Fan let out a devil roar. The power of the god-exterminating shield that had fused with his eternal true body was fully activated at this moment. This was not a battle between Ning Fan and a fourth-step existence. Ning Fan was not qualified to do so. This was the battle between the god-exterminating shield and a fourth-step immortal emperor as a heaven-opening treasure. He could even guess the source of the fourth-step immortal force in this myriad star formation. The enemy had only activated a tiny bit of immortal Emperor Ziwei's immortal power. What he possessed was 1/6 of the complete God-Destroyer shield. In terms of quantity, he was far superior to his opponent. As a result, Ning Fan's devil roar actually overpowered the devil voice of a fourth-step immortal sovereign in the myriad star formation. Impossible! This child's demonic voice actually overshadowed Empress Purple Myrtle's demonic voice. Wan Xingzi was extremely shocked, and he hardened his heart and pushed the myriad star formation to its limits. In the middle of the star array, the purple star myrtle suddenly exploded one after another. The chaotic star power swept across the sky, condensing into a finger shadow that covered the sky. That was the finger of an immortal sovereign that Wan Xingzi had deduced by deducing the star power. Of course, its power was not as strong as the true finger of an immortal king. However, it was definitely infinitely close to the attack of a quasi-saint realm expert. It was enough to kill a weak immortal emperor with a single strike. The finger of an immortal sovereign, huh? You have the finger of immortal Emperor Ziwei, but I have the god-exterminating protection. Ning Fan suddenly put his palms together. Golden flames immediately flew out from his body, turning into a gigantic golden flame shield that connected the sky and blocked the finger of the immortal sovereign. When the finger of the immortal sovereign pressed down on the golden flame shield, it only left a few cracks on it. It did not shatter the golden flame shield. Ning Fan had blocked the finger of the immortal sovereign. Impossible! This is already my strongest attack. I sacrificed the lives of countless of my companions to activate it. How is it possible for you to block it so easily? Wan Xingzi's mood instantly fell to the bottom. He could not believe the scene in front of him. Ning Fan did not care about Wan Xingzi's feelings. He admitted that Wan Xingzi was very strong. However, compared to him, he was still much weaker. If Wan Xingzi could perform a few more divinations on this level of the immortal sovereign's finger, he might really be able to harm him. Unfortunately, Wan Xingzi did not seem to have the remaining strength to prepare a second finger attack. If he only has the power to attack once, it was not worth mentioning at all. Collapse! Ning Fan threw out the ancient Devil Mountain breaking punch one after another. The starry world in front of him was shattered by him. The scene changed and returned to the real world. Seeing that Ning Fan had completely destroyed the myriad star formation, Wan Xingzi's fear towards Ning Fan rose to an unprecedented level. How would he still dare to fight Ning Fan? He turned around and fled. As for the other experts of the foreign races, all of them were implicated and killed by Wan Xingzi. The myriad star formation was a technique that harmed one's enemies but also oneself. In order to provide energy for the myriad star formation, countless experts of the foreign races had their life force sucked away by the star power. Currently, other than him, there were only 4 other immortal emperors of the foreign races who were still alive. However, all of them did not have much combat power left and were extremely weak. It was as if their strength had been drained by the myriad star formation. I'll leave these weak immortal emperors to fellow Taoists. I'll go after that half-step quasi-saint from the myriad star clan. Wan Xingzi fled too fast. Ning Fan did not have the time to care about the other enemies. Yunyan locked onto the direction where Wan Xingzi fled and chased after him. As a half-step quasi-saint, Wan Xingzi's speed was naturally not slow. Unfortunately, Ning Fan was even faster. In just 10 breaths' time, he caught up with Wan Xingzi. This young man is just an immortal king realm cultivator, but his speed is actually faster than mine. Wan Xingzi was shocked. How would he still dare to flee on the surface of the water? His massive body dived into the river, trying to use the undercurrent to escape into the deep waters. Ning Fan sneered and chased after him to the bottom of the river in a flash. Once the foreign races enter the water, their speed would be greatly enhanced. Unfortunately, they were still not as fast as him. In another 10 breaths' time, Ning Fan caught up with Wan Xingzi for the second time in a remote area under the water. Wan Xingzi was both shocked and enraged. What an arrogant young man! How dare you chase me to the bottom of the river? If that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless. After letting out a faint smile, Wan Xingzi spread out his spirit sense, which turned into countless message-transmitting flying swords. They flew in all directions, trying to seek help from the third group of immortal emperors and quasi-saints. How could Ning Fan give Wan Xingzi the chance to ask for help? His spirit sense turned into a waterfall and swept away all the message-transmitting flying swords. Humph! Even if you destroy my message-transmitting flying swords, the ripples from our battle is still enough to shock everyone. Forget it. I won't run anymore. Once I enter the water, my strength will increase by 30%. It won't be difficult for me to fight you for 2 hours. It's more than enough for me to wait for reinforcements. Wan Xingzi suddenly stopped moving forward. He let out a cold harumph and turned around abruptly. Then he spat out countless star arrows at Ning Fan. Ning Fan was already prepared. He ignored Wan Xingzi and destroyed all the star arrows with just a few casual punches. Then he approached Wan Xingzi and used the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike, sending Wan Xingzi flying backward with a muffled groan. He was slightly injured. Since the number of consecutive attacks had just started, even though the power of such punches could injure Wan Xingzi, it was not enough to seriously injure him. As a half-step quasi-saint realm expert, Wan Xingzi's skin and flesh were quite thick. However, the destructive power of the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike still frightened Wan Xingzi. It was his first time facing the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike head-on. In the past, he had only seen his companions being killed by the strike. It was nowhere as direct as experiencing it firsthand. According to what Wan Xingzi knew, the higher the number of consecutive attacks of Ning Fan's ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike, the more powerful it would be. Ning Fan had just started with a few punches and he was already slightly injured. What would happen if the number of consecutive attacks kept increasing? However, as a half-step quasi-saint realm expert, he was not someone to be trifled with. Even though the myriad star formation was broken, he still had other trump cards which allowed him to fight Ning Fan for a while and wait for reinforcements. Myriad Star Immortality Technique. Wan Xingzi's body suddenly shone with dazzling starlight. Countless illusory Z-Way stars shone in the water. There were actually more than 1 million of them. Under the treatment of the starlight, Wan Xingzi's minor injuries were instantly healed. Starlight healing technique, huh? Ning Fan's eyes became slightly solemn. Wan Xingzi's star technique had actually reached the level of 1 million stars. He really should not be underestimated. Relying on the power of his star technique, Wan Xingzi was not afraid of the damage from the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike. He swung his demon claws at Ning Fan's punches, clashing head-on with Ning Fan's fists. Ning Fan's consecutive attacks kept increasing. Each of his punches was fiercer than the previous one. However, Wan Xingzi's star technique was not weak either. Even the 3,000 consecutive attacks of the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike could not kill Wan Xingzi with a single punch. It could only slightly injure him. After 4,000 consecutive attacks, Wan Xingzi began to struggle and his injuries gradually worsened. After 5,000 consecutive attacks, Wan Xingzi began to cough out blood frequently. After 6,000 consecutive attacks, Wan Xingzi even coughed out his golden sovereign blood. His physical body was about to explode from Ning Fan's attacks. From the start to the 6,000 consecutive attacks, he did not even use 100 breaths of time. Wan Xingzi was shocked and speechless. At first, he thought that it would not be a problem for him to last a few hours against Ning Fan after his strength had greatly increased after entering the water. However, the cruel reality told him that he did not even last 100 breaths of time against Ning Fan, and his physical body was already about to explode. This young man is just an immortal King Realm cultivator. How could he be so strong? Even though he was not as strong as a true Quasi-Saint Realm expert, there were already not many first-grade half-step Quasi-Saint Realm experts who could be a match for him. Life substitution technique. Wan Xingzi's demon eyes flashed with a hint of pain. He had used his last life-saving technique. He knew that if he did not use this technique, it would be impossible for him to last until the reinforcements arrived. He would certainly die in Ning Fan's hands. Bang! As soon as he used this technique, Wan Xingzi's physical body suddenly exploded into countless rays of starlight and disappeared. He actually ran away? Ning Fan was surprised. The magnetic force at the bottom of the water was too strong. The rain sense could not spread too far. He took out the treasure-searching compass to search for Wan Xingzi's whereabouts. As a result, he found out that after Wan Xingzi self-detonated once, he actually managed to travel a distance of several hundred days in an instant. Even if Ning Fan chased after him at full speed, he would still need a few days to catch up to him. It was no longer practical for him to chase after Wan Xingzi in the third path, which had a Quasi-Saint Realm expert. Life substitution technique. What a strange life-saving technique. Sure enough, a half-step Quasi-Saint Realm expert is not that easy to kill. Compared to those ordinary immortal emperors whom he killed, they were on a completely different level. The treasure-searching compass sensed that there were tens of powerful light specks nearby. All of them were rushing towards this place. Ning Fan did not plan to stay at the bottom of the water for long. He quickly returned to the surface. Even though Wan Xingzi managed to escape in this battle, it would not be easy for him to get out of the water again because he had returned to the bottom of the water from the surface. Ning Fan threw Wan Xingzi to the back of his mind and hurried back to the Azure Sky Fortress. At this moment, the 8 scenic emperors and the 3 sons of the Sword Mountain were engaged in a bitter battle with 4 weakened immortal emperors of the foreign races. That's right. It was a bitter battle. Both sides had the same number of enemies. Even though the enemy's cultivation base was slightly higher, they were in a weakened state. In reality, the Eastern Heaven Immortal Emperors should have the upper hand. However, even though they had the upper hand, they were still caught in a bitter battle. They could not take down the 4 emperors of the foreign races while Ning Fan was away. It was enough to show how huge the gap between the Eastern Heaven Immortal Emperors and the foreign races' Immortal Emperors was. Fellow Taoist Ning, you're back. Quickly help us take down these 4 emperors. The 8 scenic emperors and the others were overjoyed. Damn it! Why did the white-robed Yama return so quickly? Not good. Quickly dive into the water. The immortal emperors of the foreign races cursed their bad luck. Who would have thought that Ning Fan would return so quickly after chasing after Wan Xingzi? The 4 immortal emperors of the foreign races were filled with fear. Initially, they planned to bully the Eastern Heaven Immortal Emperors before Ning Fan returned. Now that Ning Fan had returned, they no longer had the mood to bully the Eastern Heaven Immortal Emperors. Immediately, they wanted to dive into the water to escape. 1/6 tribulation, 2/7 tribulation, and 1/8 tribulation. How could Ning Fan let these foreign races escape? It was difficult to kill a half-step Quasi-Saint Realm expert. How could he let these ordinary immortal emperors go? He raised his finger and used the heaven sealing technique. However, he realized that he could not stop the 4 emperors. He thought that they were probably wearing the East pacifying talisman that was given by the great divine priest of the foreign races. We have the East pacifying talisman. Your Eastern Heaven ancestral technique won't be able to stop us. The 4 immortal emperors of the foreign races burst into laughter. Before their laughter died away, they were caught by a huge net that covered the sky. Ning Fan scooped them up from the water as if he was catching fish. What kind of net is this? The 4 immortal emperors of the foreign races wanted to break free from Ning Fan's huge net. However, when they realized that they could not break free, how could they still laugh? If they were not mistaken, this net was actually a huge restraining net condensed by the power of the wood palm realm. If it is used for recovery, the wood palm realm could be used to recover magic power and heal injuries. If it is used for combat, the wood palm realm would be the best supporting Dao law to trap and restrain the enemy. So, it can't trap these immortal emperors without the heaven sealing technique? Sorry, now that Ning Fan is the wood father god, he has more means to trap his enemies. The true power of the wood palm realm was something that even 9 tribulation immortal emperors would be afraid of. Even if these 4 immortal emperors were in their peak condition, it would still be difficult for them to break free from the wood palm realm. Now that they were in a weakened state, it was even more impossible for them to break free within a short period of time. I'll take your life while you're down. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with killing intent. He summoned the 7 treasures wondrous tree and struck it at the 4 immortal emperors who were trapped. The 4 immortal emperors were trapped in the net and had no way to escape. They could only brace themselves to resist the attacks of the 7 treasures wondrous tree. At this moment, the power of the 7 treasures wondrous tree had directly risen to another level in the hands of Ning Fan, the wood father god. Every time it struck the 4 immortal emperors, it was like a mid-grade innate magic treasure. Not long after that, the physical body of the 6th tribulation immortal emperor was destroyed and his demon soul was captured and destroyed. Another 100 breaths later, the other 2 7 tribulation immortal emperors were also killed by Ning Fan in the same way. Another 200 breaths later, the last 8 tribulation immortal emperor also sacrificed himself gloriously. The 8 scenery emperors and the others felt their scalps go numb. Those were immortal emperors whom they had fought hard against, but they were all killed by Ning Fan in just a few moves. Did he have to be so relaxed? Ning Fan was indeed worthy of being the 8th generation killing emperor who was known as a monster. He was not someone ordinary people like them could be compared to. Perhaps only the outstanding immortal kings in the ancient times could be a match for the current Ning Fan. It's all thanks to fellow Taoist Ning's help that my Azure Sky Fortress is able to survive. We will never forget your great kindness. After the 8 scenery emperors and the others calmed themselves down, they cupped their fists at Ning Fan and expressed their gratitude. Ning Fan accepted their gratitude calmly. At this moment, being humble would only make him look hypocritical. He would even be suspected of deliberately showing off his achievements. By the way, did you manage to capture that half-step quasi-saint of the Myriad Star clan? The 8 scenery emperors asked a question that many cultivators guarding the fortress were concerned about. I couldn't capture him. He managed to escape. Ning Fan sighed, feeling deeply regretful. It was not that he did not try his best, but it was really not easy to kill a half-step quasi-saint. Besides, Wan Xingzi's life-saving means were too heaven-defying. Star Loss life substitution technique? Ning Fan was doubtful. Even if he immobilized Wan Xingzi, trapped him, or even killed him on the spot, he would still be able to preserve his life with this secret technique. Cultivators in the cultivation declining period were not worth mentioning. However, the abilities used by these immortal emperors of foreign races were all supreme immortal techniques inherited from the Z-Wei immortal domain. Thus, they should not be underestimated. Besides, what kind of existences were half-step quasi-saints? They were existences at the same level as Zhongyu, Afro, the Dead Emperor and Light Buddha. As long as they were related to the word, holy, they could no longer be treated lightly. How could they be killed so easily? It was true that Ning Fan had the strength to defeat a half-step quasi-saint, but he did not have the strength to capture a half-step quasi-saint alive. Capturing Afro alive that day was just a beautiful accident. It was impossible for such accidents to happen again and again. Sigh. It's indeed a pity that I couldn't capture him in one go. However, fellow Taoist Ning, you don't have to worry about it too much. After all, the opponent is a half-step quasi-saint. Being able to defeat him and make him flee at the sight of you is enough to prove your capabilities. Besides, fellow Taoist has killed a total of 8 immortal emperors in this battle. It's really an eye-opener for us. After this battle, I'm afraid the third path can be conquered in one go. 8 of the immortal emperors of the foreign races are dead and one of them has fled. There are no more immortal emperors of the foreign races on the surface of the third path. At this moment, there are only a group of low-grade immortal emperors guarding the White Tiger Pass. It's the best time for fellow Taoists to seize the pass. As for me, I will stay here to protect fellow Taoist Luoho. With me around, I will certainly not let anyone interrupt fellow Taoist Luo from comprehending the mysteries of the Tao Mountain. All right, if that's the case, I'll have to trouble fellow Taoists to protect me while I assemble the army and send troops to the White Tiger Pass. We will take back the third waterway in one go. The 8 scenery emperors and the others were both happy and ashamed at the same time. They were happy because they finally had a chance to take back the third waterway which they had been fighting hard for dozens of years. They were ashamed because Ning Fan had just arrived and he easily accomplished something that they could not do for dozens of years. Now, all the cultivators in the Alliance Army said that Ning Fan was the strongest expert in the Alliance Army of the Border River. Their words were not false. Ning Fan stayed in the Azure Sky Pass. There were no more immortal emperors of the foreign races in the next pass, the White Tiger Pass. Thus, it did not matter much whether he participated in the battle or not. Even though the Eastern Heaven Immortal Emperor was weaker than the immortal emperors of the foreign races who were at the same level as him, it was still very easy for him to deal with the foreign races who were below the immortal emperor realm. If an immortal emperor still had a hard time dealing with low-grade immortal emperors, he would really have lived his life in vain. It was not difficult for Ning Fan to win the battle. However, he still suffered some injuries. Wan Xingzi was still a formidable figure. Being able to injure Ning Fan and escape with great difficulty, he was worthy of his half-step quasi-sage realm cultivation base. This man is just a half-step quasi-sage realm cultivator. If he's a real first-level quasi-sage realm cultivator, I would be the one who should run. My cultivation base has already attained the Immortal King realm in all 4 elements. The next step is to become an Immortal Emperor. In order to become an Immortal Emperor, I must pass the 9-5 Great Tribulations. To me, the Battle King's Tribulation is quite meaningful to me. Ning Fan patiently stayed in the Azure Sky Pass to protect Luoho. While he was observing Luoho's breakthrough to the Immortal Emperor realm, his own comprehension towards the Immortal Emperor realm was also increasing bit by bit. 6 days later, the 8 scenery emperors and the others recovered the White Tiger Pass and sent the news to the Azure Sky Pass. 45 days later, Luoho finished his comprehension and successfully severed the Tao Mountain. He officially advanced to the Immortal Emperor realm from the Immortal King realm and became a 6 Tribulation Immortal Emperor. Luoho, who was just an Immortal King, could already fight evenly against a 7 Tribulation Immortal Emperor. His aura force was not any weaker than that of an experienced 8 Tribulation Immortal Emperor like the 8 Scenery Emperors. The current Luoho could definitely be considered as the main force of the Alliance Army. This time, it's all thanks to Brother Ning's protection that I can safely advance to the Immortal Emperor realm. Brother Ning, oh Brother Ning, I really don't know how to thank you. It's a pity that I'm not a woman. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have to marry you. Luoho was in a good mood after successfully advancing to the Immortal Emperor realm. He was deeply touched by Ning Fan's help. Of course, he would not thank Ning Fan again. He had already regarded Ning Fan as a friend who had gone through life and death with him. There was no need for him to be courteous when talking to Ning Fan. Now that the knot in his heart had been untied, he began to joke with Ning Fan calmly. Even if you're a woman, I still don't want you, Ning Fan said helplessly. He had painstakingly helped his good friend transcend his tribulation, but his good friend actually did not behave properly. They were indeed a group of bad friends. However, he did not dislike such bad friends because he knew that if he was in danger during his tribulation, his good friend would certainly help him regardless of the cost. If you don't want me, do you want wine? I can consider wine. Just take it as a congratulation for your success in advancing to the Immortal Emperor realm. Cheers. Cheers. It was nighttime. Luoho was extremely drunk. Ning Fan, on the other hand, was half drunk and half sober. He flew out of the Azure Sky Fortress under the cover of the night. The moment he left the fortress, he got rid of the smell of alcohol in his body. The third water route had been completely taken back. Luo Ho had also successfully transcended his 9-5 Great Tribulation. However, Ning Fan still had an unfinished business in the third path. He still had to investigate the mysterious disappearance of Great Emperor Lai Jun. In order to protect Luo Ho, Ning Fan had no choice but to delay until today to investigate this matter. He was very curious about how Great Emperor Lai Jun, a dignified 7th Tribulation expert, disappeared in the third path without anyone noticing. According to the intelligence, Great Emperor Lai Jun went missing during his routine patrol. Since that's the case, I'll just investigate along the route he patrolled that day. As soon as he thought of this, Ning Fan suddenly had a feeling of sudden inspiration. Immediately he was shocked. This time, sudden inspiration was a premonition of danger. There seemed to be something on the route Great Emperor Lai Jun patrolled that day that gave him a huge sense of danger. One had to know that his current self could even face a first-level quasi-saint without being defeated. He even had the strength to escape from a second-level quasi-saint. Then, what level of danger was it that could actually make him have a sudden inspiration? Ning Fan's expression turned grim as he flew along the route he patrolled. No matter how dangerous the path ahead was, he must find out the reason behind Great Emperor Lai Jun's disappearance. This matter was entrusted to him by Emperor Tsong. He still had a good impression of Emperor Tsong. After all, Emperor Tsong had always taken good care of him. Chapter 1136. The night was boundless. The water of the Realm River was rippling and the night breeze was slightly cold. Ning Fan controlled the treasure-searching compass while flying close to the surface of the water. He followed the patrolling route of Great Emperor Lai Jun that day and moved further away from the Azure Sky Pass. Ning Fan had planted a trace of Lai Jun's qi into the treasure-searching compass. Using it as an index, the compass could vaguely sense the whereabouts of Great Emperor Lai Jun. It was a very weak sense. It could only sense that Lai Jun was currently somewhere in the Realm River, but it could not sense his exact location for the time being. After flying for an unknown period of time, the compass suddenly pointed at the bottom of the river. Ning Fan remained silent for a moment. In the end, he decided to dive into the third path to find out what was going on. Of course, he would not dive in openly. He stood on the surface of the water and suddenly held his breath. At this moment, Ning Fan's qi suddenly changed. He no longer felt like a living person but a tree. He then transformed into the ghost face that he had not used for a long time and dived into the bottom of the water. The immortal sovereign seal on the surface of the water actually did not sense anything. The immortal sovereign seal had determined that Ning Fan was an ordinary plant. Thus, it did not sense anything. In that case, the low-grade foreign race members who were patrolling in the water did not notice that Ning Fan had gone into the water. The sense is starting to get stronger. It seems like Lai Jun is nearby. Ning Fan had no choice but to dive down to the bottom of the water. Just as he dived, he discovered a problem. He had been diving for more than 2 hours, but he still could not reach the bottom of the river. The river here is so deep. If it was any other place, he would only need to dive for 1 hour at most to reach the bottom of the water. The deeper the water, the more intense the sense of the treasure-searching compass became. The feeling of uneasiness in Ning Fan's heart also increased bit by bit. It was a premonition of danger. There must be something dangerous down there. Since it could make Lai Jun disappear without anyone noticing, I must not let my guard down. Ning Fan dived for another 4 hours, but he still could not see the bottom of the water. At this depth, there were no longer any low-grade foreign race members who were patrolling the area. There was no light at the bottom of the dark water. There were also no corals that could emit light in the surroundings. Ning Fan's eyes were covered with green light. Even though there was no light in the surroundings, his heavenly being eye could still see the scenery around him clearly. Fish bones, a lot of huge fish bones. Ning Fan discovered that there were countless gigantic fish bones floating in the water. There were also traces of gigantic creatures gnawing on the bones. After diving for several more hours, the number of fish bones began to decrease until they could no longer be seen. A fishy smell began to enter his nose. In order to steal the gloomy heavy wood, I've traveled almost the entire eastern boundary river, but I've never been to such a deep place. This place is like a bottomless pit in the Realm River. I have already dived for close to half a day, and I still can't feel the bottom of the water. Ning Fan raised his guard and continued to dive deeper. 1 day passed, 2 days passed, 6 days passed, and he finally reached the bottom of the water. The water pressure at such a depth was already so heavy that even his divine spirit body found it hard to endure. Ning Fan's eyes widened in astonishment as he stared at the gigantic creature that occupied the bottomless pit of the Realm River. If the treasure-searching compass didn't sense wrongly, Lai Jundi was currently in the stomach of this giant creature. It was a gigantic cuttlefish that emitted faint red light from its body. Currently, its eyes were open and it was snoring loudly like thunder. The body of this cuttlefish was too huge. Just its eyeball alone was as huge as an emperor-grade cultivation planet. If it stretches its body, it could cover the entire starry sky of an emperor-grade starfield. Its skin was too thick. It was so thick that even mid-grade innate magic treasures might not be able to break through its skin. Its blood and chi were just too vast. Ning Fan only knew that Black Rope's blood and chi could already be considered as one of the top experts in the era of Dharma decline. However, the blood and chi of this cuttlefish was actually several thousand times stronger than Black Rope. If the difficulty of killing a single Black Rope was comparable to killing several thousand immortal emperors, then the difficulty of killing this cuttlefish was comparable to killing several thousand Black Ropes. Ning Fan could not sense the specific cultivation level of this cuttlefish, but he could make a rough estimate. This cuttlefish should not have attained the 3rd step yet. The fluctuation of its chi was also relatively large. It seemed like this cuttlefish was in a weakened state due to some unknown reason. When its chi was at its weakest, it only possessed the cultivation level of the 6 Tribulations Eternal Era. When its chi was at its strongest, it seemed to be even stronger than Enmo and the strange eyeball that Ning Fan had seen before. When he sensed this, Ning Fan's expression could not help but change. He thought to himself, could this cuttlefish actually be an ancient great cultivator at its peak? The faint red light that the cuttlefish gave off made Ning Fan's heart turn cold. There's no mistaking it. This red light was clearly the extremely pure power of Tribulation Sense. The identity of this cuttlefish was actually a grand firmament tribulation spirit. An ancient great cultivator, a grand firmament tribulation spirit with a blood and chi that was several thousand times stronger than Black Rope's. Ning Fan was rather doubtful that there was any living creature in the era of Dharma decline that could be a match for this cuttlefish. Why is there such a terrifying existence sleeping at the bottom of the 3rd path? Is this cuttlefish also a member of the foreign race's army? If that's the case, Ning Fan's expression turned extremely unpleasant. If everything was as he had guessed, the situation would be troublesome. Is there anyone in the entire Eastern Heaven who could be a match for this cuttlefish? Even if all the cultivators of the Eastern Heaven were to attack together, they probably would not be able to kill this cuttlefish. No wonder he had a sudden impulse. No wonder he felt a sense of danger. Fortunately, this cuttlefish was currently sleeping and did not notice his approach. Otherwise, Ning Fan did not have the confidence to escape from this cuttlefish. This is, the blood god is even darker. This is, the blood god is even darker. The ability to communicate with all living beings allowed Ning Fan to listen to the voice of the surrounding river water. The river water was telling Ning Fan the identity of this cuttlefish. This is, the blood god is even darker, blood god. Ning Fan was not unfamiliar with this title. In the beginning, in order to steal the heavy wood, he disguised himself as a fish and sneaked into the foreign races. Thus, he often heard this name. According to what he knew, the foreign races in the eastern Jia River worshipped a god and called him the blood god. The blood god was the belief of the foreign races in the eastern Jia River. This kind of belief was even higher than the worship they had for the great divine priest. In the past, Ning Fan only thought that the so-called blood god was an existence of religious belief and it was not a real existence. However, at this moment, his thoughts changed. This cuttlefish that was as large as the starry sky in front of him was probably the Lord Blood God that the foreign races in the eastern Jia River worshipped. The blood god is even darker. Gang Wu must be the name of this cuttlefish. Ning Fan's eyes were filled with struggle. He had clearly detected that Emperor Jun was inside the cuttlefish's abdomen. However, he did not have the ability to break open the cuttlefish's abdomen and rescue Emperor Jun. He did not know how to report this matter to Emperor Tsung. He also did not know if there was really someone who could defeat this giant cuttlefish and rescue Emperor Jun in this Dharma-ending era. Perhaps there is someone who can match this cuttlefish. If it is an outstanding expert among the great ancient emperors, he would certainly be able to do it. Ning Fan's eyes lit up. If Great Emperor Ancient Chaos is here, he would certainly have a way to deal with this cuttlefish and rescue Emperor Jun. But where is Great Emperor Ancient Chaos? Ning Fan felt a headache again. According to the information he obtained, Great Emperor Ancient Chaos had come to the eastern Jie River after leaving the Divine Tomb. However, Ning Fan did not find Great Emperor Ancient Chaos even after searching the entire eastern Jie River. Obviously, Great Emperor Ancient Chaos was no longer in the eastern Jie River. He had already left and no one knew where he went. It was impossible to ask Great Emperor Ancient Chaos for help in rescuing Emperor Jun. Just as Ning Fan was pondering, a sudden change occurred. Somehow, the giant cuttlefish woke up all of a sudden. Its giant eyes were filled with vigor and it locked onto Ning Fan's direction with ferocious flames. Shi lu 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 lu? Is there food coming to my door? It's actually talking to itself. Ning Fan's expression changed. Just as he was about to execute a method to escape from this place, the giant cuttlefish revealed an extremely adorable expression at the next moment. It withdrew all of its killing intent and let out a strange, lazy laugh. Lu Lu 1111. Lu Lu 11, Lu Cc Lu Lu Lu, Lu Lu Hu Hu Hu. It's not food. It's a companion of the tribulation spirit. Looks like I haven't woken up yet and I'm still dreaming about my hometown. Forget it. I'll go back to sleep. The ferocious flames in the giant cuttlefish's eyes dimmed. It turned its body and fell asleep again. Due to its massive size, just a simple flip of its body was enough to trigger the most terrifying tsunami in this uninhabited deep water area. The strong water current nearly sent Ning Fan flying. The cuttlefish had indeed seen Ning Fan. However, it ignored him. It was because it recognized the scent of Ning Fan's Tai Tsong tribulation spirit. With its limited spiritual intelligence, it thought that it was definitely daydreaming when it saw other tribulation spirits of the Grand Firmament realm. Therefore, it did not pay much attention to this matter and treated Ning Fan's arrival as a dream. Ning Fan used all of his strength to barely withstand the impact of the ocean current and stabilized his body. He remained silent and stared at the giant cuttlefish, falling into deep thought. If it were someone else, they certainly would not know what the cuttlefish was talking about. However, he could understand it. As expected, this cuttlefish was a tribulation spirit of the Grand Firmament realm. Moreover, it did not seem to be very smart. It was prone to getting muddle-headed and could not even differentiate between reality and dreams when it is sleeping. Looking at the giant cuttlefish's mouth that was talking in its sleep, Ning Fan suddenly had a bold idea. He certainly could not defeat this cuttlefish in a fight. However, what if he sneaks into the cuttlefish's stomach? As an ancient grand cultivation realm being, this cuttlefish's senses were naturally extremely sharp. It could even sense Ning Fan's presence when he got close to it. It would open its sleepy eyes and see through Ning Fan's invisibility. If Ning Fan invades its body, there was no guarantee that it would not wake up completely. In a fit of rage, it would directly digest Ning Fan. Sneaking into the cuttlefish's stomach to save Ning Fan seemed to be very dangerous. However, it seemed like he could only do it secretly. Ning Fan certainly could not defeat this cuttlefish in a head-on fight. Ning Fan did not have much of a relationship with Emperor Lai Jun. However, since they were both cultivators of the Eastern Heaven, it would be somewhat unreasonable for him to not save Emperor Lai Jun. The life and death of a stranger could not move his heart. However, it was different for his comrades who were bathed in blood and fought alongside him. The oath of the Realm River meeting was still ringing in his ears. As long as Emperor Lai Jun wholeheartedly protects the Eastern Heaven, he would be Ning Fan's brother. It was impossible for Ning Fan to not save him. After a long time, Ning Fan's eyes turned solemn. He finally made a decision. He no longer concealed himself. After all, the cuttlefish could still see him even if he concealed himself. Why bother? He suppressed his cultivation base and used the chi of the Grand Firmament Realm Tribulation Spirit as the main source. His entire body was covered in red light. Dressed in white robes and emitting a faint red light, Ning Fan approached the cuttlefish bit by bit. Perhaps it was because Ning Fan's tribulation spirit chi gave the cuttlefish a sense of intimacy. Even though it could vaguely sense that Ning Fan was getting closer to it, it did not open its eyes again. It also did not put up any guard to stop Ning Fan from getting closer. Upon seeing this, Ning Fan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He now had more confidence in sneaking into the cuttlefish's body. The danger of this move was even a few times greater than him challenging all the immortal emperors and quasi-saints in the Eastern Realm River alone. As long as he takes a wrong step, what awaits him would be being killed by this cuttlefish. However, that was his nature. As long as he made up his mind on something, he would not hesitate to do it no matter how dangerous it is. He's getting closer. He's getting closer. It would not be difficult for the cuttlefish to swallow tens of cultivation planets in a single gulp. Relying on his identity as the Grand Firmament Tribulation Spirit, Ning Fan swam all the way to the cuttlefish's mouth without causing any resistance. Seeing this, Ning Fan's confidence grew by a lot. He took a deep breath and felt as if he had entered the cuttlefish's black hole. This cuttlefish's body was too huge. Ning Fan had clearly just entered its body, but it felt like he had entered a vast and desolate starry sky. No, it was not accurate to say that it was desolate. Ning Fan discovered all kinds of strange things inside the cuttlefish's body. First of all, Ning Fan discovered that there were countless leech-like parasites growing inside the cuttlefish's body. They were not ordinary leeches. Instead, they were existences as large as mountains. Those leeches sustained their lives by sucking the cuttlefish's vast blood chi. There were more than millions of them. Any one of them had a cultivation base comparable to a true immortal realm cultivator. Some of the stronger ones could even fight against an immortal emperor realm cultivator. This made Ning Fan fearful. However, he had already encountered more than 40 immortal emperor realm leeches along the way. If all of them attack him at the same time, he could only protect himself with all his might. Fortunately, the leeches here did not attack Ning Fan. They did not sleep together with their host. Instead, each of them stared at Ning Fan with eyes that were as large as copper bells. They did not know whether Ning Fan was another food for their host. They only knew that the chi of the Grand Firmament Tribulation Spirit on Ning Fan's body was very similar to their host's. The cuttlefish's strength made them unable to resist. Even when facing Ning Fan, who was a Grand Firmament Tribulation Spirit, they did not dare to act presumptuously or attack him. In other words, Ning Fan was the only one who could make them fear him. If it's some other food, Ning Fan remained unscathed along the way and entered deeper into the cuttlefish's abdomen. Over there, Ning Fan saw all kinds of strange things being swallowed by the cuttlefish. There were giant sunken ships, the remains of ancient cultivators, an abandoned city whose architectural style was obviously not the style of the four heavens, and a cultivation planet that had been abandoned for an unknown number of years. This cuttlefish really eats everything. Ning Fan was deeply speechless. The deeper he went into the abdomen, the stronger the stench of decay in the surroundings. He did not know how long he had been moving forward. Suddenly, a ray of blood light soared into the sky. According to the treasure-searching compass, Lai Jun was in that direction. Ning Fan raised his guard and entered the range of the blood-red light. At the moment he entered the area, countless blood-red tentacles suddenly attacked him from all directions. Each of the tentacles carried the full power of a 9-tribulation immortal emperor's attack. However, after sensing the chi of a tribulation spirit on Ning Fan's body, those tentacles suddenly calmed down. They no longer attacked Ning Fan and allowed him to move forward. Ning Fan heaved a sigh of relief. If these tentacles do not stop attacking him, he would have no choice but to counterattack with all his strength in order to not be tied up by them. The identity of the Grand Firmament Tribulation Spirit was unexpectedly useful in this place. In other words, he could enter the cuttlefish's abdomen unscathed. Other food would not have such good luck. Ning Fan's eyes scanned the surroundings. In the depths of this blood light, there were no less than 10 billion tentacles. Most of the tentacles were entangled with something. Spiritual herbs, magic treasures, cultivators, experts of the foreign races. These tentacles were the digestive organs of this cuttlefish. They could digest all the food that the cuttlefish swallows. Speaking of which, isn't this cuttlefish the Lord Blood God that the foreign races worship? Why does it even eat the foreign races? Speaking of which, there seems to be a lot of good stuff in the cuttlefish's abdomen. There are rare spiritual herbs, emperor-grade pills, and even innate magic treasures. I wonder where it swallowed all of them from. Ning Fan did not go to steal the treasures in the cuttlefish's abdomen. He did not want to cause unnecessary trouble. After all, it was already a huge risk to save Lai Jun alone. With the help of the treasure-searching compass, Ning Fan quickly found Lai Jun's location. Lai Jun's entire body was entangled by the tentacles. He could not move at all and was unconscious. When he was unconscious, he was still talking in his sleep with fear in his eyes. Don't eat me. Don't. Save me. Save me. I don't want to be eaten. I don't want to be eaten. The fear contained in those words was not an act. Lai Jun seemed to have been traumatized by being eaten by the cuttlefish. Ning Fan tried to pull Lai Jun's body out of the entanglement of the tentacles. It was obvious that the tentacles were unwilling to let go of Lai Jun, who was a delicious food. Ning Fan did have a way to cut off the tentacles and save Lai Jun. However, doing so would inevitably cause him pain, and there was a possibility that the cuttlefish would wake up. After trying 100 times, Ning Fan still could not pull Lai Jun's physical body out of the tentacles. Without any other choice, Ning Fan could only give up on Lai Jun's physical body. He made a bloody hole on his dantian and directly pulled out his primordial spirit. The small face of Lai Jun's primordial spirit looked weak. Ning Fan's destructive actions and the tentacles that had been feeding on him for many days had definitely brought him quite a lot of damage. Even his Dao cultivation foundation had been damaged. Amidst the pain, the small face of Lai Jun's primordial spirit slowly opened its sleepy eyes. As soon as it saw Ning Fan, it revealed a silly smile and its eyes were blank. Who are you? Are you here to save me? I'm saved. I'm saved. There was not a single word of gratitude. There was not the slightest bit of calmness. He did not have the demeanor of an immortal emperor. Because he was overly afraid of the cuttlefish, Lai Jun was actually scared silly. What kind of terrifying experience must he have gone through to be able to stun an immortal emperor? Ning Fan did not know whether he should despise Lai Jun or pity him. He still remembered the day when Lai Jun came to the meeting at the border river. He was in high spirits as if he was eager to start an all-out war against the foreign races. Today, however, he was scared out of his wits by the foreign races and became a fool. Ning Fan sighed and ignored Lai Jun's silly words. He activated his illusion technique to make him fall asleep again. Then, he kept his primordial spirit and quietly left the cuttlefish's stomach. After another 6 to 7 days, Ning Fan swam back to the surface of the water. Only when he saw the layers of Immortal Sovereign's seals on the surface of the water did he feel somewhat relieved. As long as Immortal Sovereign Zido's seals were still on the surface of the border river, that terrifying cuttlefish would not be able to chase him out of the water and cause no harm to the living beings in the water. The Immortal Sovereign seals would never allow such a supreme existence to come to the surface of the water. Looking at the layers of seals, Ning Fan fell into silence. On the day when Lai Jun went missing while patrolling, he must have dived into the water for some reason and got caught by that cuttlefish. Thinking about how many living beings in the natural world had ways to attract their prey, Ning Fan inwardly guessed that the cunning cuttlefish might have used some methods to attract Lai Jun into the water in order to find food. Forget it. Ning Fan was actually not really concerned about how the cuttlefish attracted its prey. What he was more worried about now was how to deal with Lai Jun, who was scared silly. If the cultivators of the Alliance find out that there was a terrifying cuttlefish that could scare Lai Jun silly at the bottom of the third path, their morale would probably be greatly affected. Should I make Lai Jun's matter public? Forget it. Why should I worry about this? It's better to let Emperor Tsang and the other higher-ups of the Alliance worry about this matter. I just need to focus on killing the enemies. To think that such a terrifying creature is actually hiding at the bottom of the border river. No matter what, I must not let the Immortal Sovereign's seals be destroyed. No matter what, I must repair the Immortal Sovereign's seals. Once this giant cuttlefish escapes from the border river, what awaits the cultivators of the Eastern Heaven would be a catastrophe. Chapter 1137. The news of the third waterway being pacified quickly spread throughout the entire eastern Jie River. As far as the eastern sky cultivators were concerned, this news naturally greatly boosted their morale. As for the outsiders, this was bad news. At this moment, within the Vermilion Bird Pass of the Ninth Waterway, a group of immortal emperors of the outsiders had gathered together. All of them had solemn expressions on their faces as they discussed this matter. Many of the immortal emperors of the foreign races were shocked by Ning Fan's strength. The third water path that the other cultivators of the Eastern Heaven could not reclaim even after several tens of years was already done by Ning Fan just after he arrived here. The white-robed king of hell, humph. What a powerful white-robed king of hell. He had killed 8 immortal emperors and chased away a half-step quasi-sage. Now that the Boundary River quasi-sage had not appeared, who could stop him? This is troublesome. The white-robed king of hell is unstoppable. After taking over the third route, his next target is likely to be our 9th route. If that's the case, how will the plan work? Difficult. With the immortal emperor's seal, the quasi-sage seniors of the 9th path can't come out of the water to help us guard the pass. Currently, in the Vermilion Bird Pass, there was only fellow Taoist Wan Sheng, a half-step quasi-sage, and 13 immortal emperors. The overall strength of the Vermilion Bird Pass wasn't much stronger than the White Tiger Pass. What's more troublesome is that fellow Taoist Wan Sheng is currently in seclusion and has yet to come out. If that white-robed king of hell comes, we won't be a match for him. Fellow Taoist Wan Sheng is actually still in seclusion. The fire is already burning his eyebrows, yet he can still sit still. The remnants of Zido's clan have clearly been annihilated, so why is it still able to give birth to such a heaven-defying expert of the younger generation? He's simply not inferior to an ancient immortal king. The heavens are blind. Why wasn't this child born in my purple myrtle lineage? The heavens are unfair. Humph. What's the point of saying all this nonsense now? We should quickly think of a countermeasure. If the white-robed king of hell comes here, we definitely won't be a match for him. Since fellow Taoist Wan Sheng is not here, I will step out of my place and help fellow Taoist Wan Sheng make a decision. In my opinion, we should ask the great divine priest for help and have the 6th path send a half-step saint to help us guard the pass. We'll definitely be able to suppress him if we have 2 half-saints with us. AI, the current situation is unfavorable. How can the 6th route send reinforcements? Although we have a lot of troops there are only 3 half-step quasi-sages guarding that place. I heard that the 6th path suffered a defeat a few days ago, and one of its 3 half-saints was heavily injured by the Clear Sky White Jade building. The army had no choice but to temporarily retreat to the Black Tortoise Pass and defend the pass with their lives. The white-robed king of hell must not be underestimated, but the Clear Sky White Jade building was not an ordinary person either. Even if we ask for reinforcements, I'm afraid that the 6th route won't be able to send a half-saint to support us. Damn it! How hateful! If it weren't for the restriction of the Boundary River's seal, we wouldn't have to worry about the lack of support from half-saints and quasi-saints. We wouldn't have to fear a mere white-robed king of hell. Whatever. If that white-robed king of hell really dares to come to the 9th path, this old man will be the first to fight him. No matter what, we can't tarnish the reputation of Ziwei. The group of immortal sovereigns of the foreign races kept cursing and swearing. Their words were filled with endless fear towards Ning Fan. Sitting below the foreign race emperors were 3 Eastern Heaven immortal emperors, Madame Gui Hua, Dong Ling Immortal Wang, and Emperor Mo He. These three immortal emperors had betrayed the alliance and joined the foreign races. Now, they were under the orders of the great divine priest of the foreign races to assist in the defense of the Vermilion Bird Pass. In name, they were supposed to assist in the defense, but in reality, they were just slaves of the foreign races. In such a meeting, the three of them could only listen. They had no right to interrupt. At this moment, the expressions of the three emperors were ugly. Their expressions were filled with unconcealable fear. What they feared was that Ning Fan might come to attack the ninth path. If Ning Fan really comes to the ninth path, wouldn't they, the traitors of the Eastern Heaven, be in danger? Perhaps they would end up like Emperor Primordial Pill, bearing the brunt of the attack and being killed by Ning Fan. Fellow Taoist Mo He, what should we do now? I heard that Ning Fan can kill 8 immortal sovereigns with just a raise of his hand and chase away a half-saint in 100 breaths. He is no longer the weak ant he was in the past. Killing us is as easy as flipping his palm. If he comes to the ninth path, he certainly won't let us go. Are we going to stay in the Vermilion Bird Pass with these foreign races and wait for our deaths? Dong Ling Immortal Wang secretly transmitted his voice to Emperor Mo He and Madame Gui Hua. Dong Ling Immortal Wang was a 7 Tribulation Immortal Emperor while Maha was just a 6 Tribulation Immortal Emperor. However, when Dong Ling spoke to Emperor Mo He, his tone carried a hint of respect, as if he was trying to please Ma. After we betrayed the foreign races, the great divine priest planted a death seal on us. If we escape from the Vermilion Bird Pass, the death seal will definitely take effect. The death seal. Traitors must die. We can only go all the way and defend the Vermilion Bird Pass with these foreign races. Emperor Mo He said perfunctorily. Fellow Taoist Ma, please don't use such perfunctory words to brush us off. According to what we know, you are the same as fellow Taoist Primordial Pill. Both of you are in contact with the Dark Race and the Devil Conferral Summit. A mere death seal shouldn't be a problem for fellow Taoist. If it wasn't for fellow Taoists tempting me to betray the foreign races, I wouldn't dare to do such a thing no matter how courageous I am. Now that a great calamity is upon us, fellow Taoist, you have to be responsible for me. Madame Gui Hua looked at Emperor Mo He with a charming smile. The death seal really isn't a problem for me. Seeing that you've served me well, I'll help you. If that Ning brat really attacks the ninth path, I'll bring the two of you to Northern Heaven. Maha stared at Madame Gui Hua's delicate body. His smile became a little frivolous as if he had thought of something. Dong Ling Immortal Wang and Madame Gui Hua were stunned. Then they asked with deep meaning. Northern Heaven? Could it be that the main forces of the Dark Race and the Devil Conferral Summit are in Northern Heaven? The heavenly secrets must not be revealed. Alright, if fellow Taoist can break the death seal, I'll follow you to Northern Heaven after that brat attacks the ninth path. In the future, I'll follow fellow Taoist's lead and I won't regret it. Very good. Very good. Be quiet. That myriad Saint Dragon King seems to be coming out of seclusion. What a huge commotion. As expected of a half-step sage. Maha and the others who were plotting something suddenly stopped smiling. Their conversation was disrupted by a deafening dragon roar. As soon as they heard the dragon roar, all the experts of the foreign races were overjoyed. They knew that myriad Saint Dragon King who had been in seclusion for a long time had finally come out. Congratulations, fellow Taoist myriad saint. Judging from your aura, it seems like you've gained a lot from your seclusion. I've indeed gained a lot. During this seclusion, I've cultivated the 10 heads technique of Saint Rubble to the 8th level. Myriad Saint Dragon King laughed heartily. He seemed to be in a good mood. As soon as Myriad Saint Dragon King said that, all the immortal emperors of the foreign races were shocked. You've actually cultivated it to the 8th level. In that case, doesn't it mean that no one below the 2nd level Quasi-Sage realm can kill you? Even if fellow Taoist hasn't truly broken through to the Quasi-Sage realm, you're invincible against anyone below the Quasi-Sage realm with just your 8 heads technique. With fellow Taoist here, that white robe Yama is nothing. Fellow Taoist myriad saint, please take down that white-robed Yama. Let that brat know the power of my Z-Way immortal cultivation. Dragon King Wansheng's brows twitched. He was puzzled. Who was the white-robed king of hell? He had never heard of this name before. He went into seclusion before Ning Fan became famous. Naturally, he did not know that the so-called white-robed Yama was referring to Ning Fan. Seeing that Dragon King Wansheng did not know who Ning Fan was, one of the experts of the foreign races immediately explained Ning Fan's ferocious reputation and battle achievements to him. As soon as Dragon King Wansheng heard that Ning Fan was able to kill immortal emperors as if he was slaughtering dogs despite having a cultivation base at the Immortal King realm, he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. However, Myriad Saint Dragon King was also a prideful person. Besides, he had cultivated the 8th head of the 10 heads technique. Thus, he was not afraid of Ning Fan. He was confident that he was invincible below the quasi-sage realm. Even a second-step quasi-sage would find it hard to kill him. A mere Ning Fan was not worth mentioning. What bullshit white-robe Yama King. It's fine if this kid doesn't come to the 9th path, but if he dares to, then I'll turn him into the dead Yama King. On the other side, the morale of the variant humans was greatly boosted by the appearance of Dragon King Wansheng. Right at this moment, a pitch-black demonic cavity suddenly appeared in the sky above Vermilion Bird Pass without any warning. Demonic cavity? An ancient devil at the peak devil conferral realm? Is he an enemy or a friend? All the immortal emperors of the foreign races, including Dragon King Wansheng, were shocked as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Only some ancient devils that had inherited their lineage from the ancient times knew how to use the demonic cavity. Now that a demonic cavity had appeared, a powerful devil would certainly descend. They must be careful. Heavenly Emperor Mohe, however, seemed to know who the newcomer was. As soon as he saw the demonic cavity, he was overjoyed. He said to Myriad Saint Dragon King, "Everyone, don't worry. This person is not an enemy. He is the reinforcement that I have invited from the northern heaven." Reinforcement? All the experts of the foreign races were overjoyed when they heard that the newcomer was their reinforcement. They could only blame Ning Fan for being too famous. Even if Myriad Saint Dragon King had comprehended the 8 heads technique, their hearts were still beating rapidly. They did not have full confidence that they could defeat Ning Fan. However, if they have an ancient devil who had comprehended the demonic cavity as their reinforcement, the situation would undoubtedly become more advantageous. If they did not sense wrongly, the newcomer seemed to be a half-saint ancient devil. In that case, the Vermilion Bird Pass would have 2 half-saints guarding it. No matter how strong Ning Fan was, could he defeat 2 half-saints at the same time? The Vermilion Bird Pass was safe. I am Xianwei. My elder brother is Taoist Bai Zhu. A burly ancient devil walked out of the demonic cavity and arrived at the Vermilion Bird Pass. He then said to the experts of the Vermilion Bird Pass proudly, "What? The famous Taoist Xianwei? The junior brother of Taoist Bai Zhu, a half-saint. He was a powerful devil-sealing puppet in ancient times. He had once killed a true half-saint realm expert." As soon as they heard the devil's name, all the experts of the foreign races were shocked. Even the prideful Myriad Saint Dragon King was a little reserved in front of this devil. They could only blame the fact that the newcomer's reputation was too great. He was an old devil who was famous in ancient times. He was not someone that a cultivator in the cultivation decline like him could compare to. Myriad Saint Dragon King secretly calculated in his mind. Even though he had mastered the 8 heads technique, his chances of winning against fellow Taoist Xianwei's green wave fire poison was still less than 30%. This person is very strong. But this is also good. With this person here, I don't have to worry about that white-robed Yama anymore. Alright, what's that white-robed Yama's name again? I forgot. The 8 heads technique really does damage a cultivator's memory. But forget it. I don't care what that white-robed Yama's name is. He's not worthy of my attention. This young man will never be able to shake the Vermilion Bird Pass. Ning Fan did not know that his people had already caused a wave of panic among the foreign races on the 9th path even before they arrived at the 9th path. He also did not know why the Devil Conferral Summit even sent an ancient devil half-step saint to assist the defense of the ninth path in order to deal with him, the white-robed Yama who had risen to fame. After settling the matter regarding Emperor Lai Jun, Ning Fan bid farewell to Luo Ho and the others and left the third path. After much consideration, Ning Fan handed Emperor Lai Jun the primordial spirit of Emperor Lai Jun. He was not a babysitter. He did not have time to take care of such a cowardly immortal emperor. Luo Ho and the others would take care of the follow-up matters regarding the third path. He did not need to worry about it, and he was also too lazy to interfere. As soon as he finished dealing with the matters in the third path, he quickly left the third path and rushed to the ninth path. The waterways that he had yet to recover were only the sixth waterway that connected to the northern heaven and the ninth waterway that connected to the southern heaven. Among them, the sixth waterway had more immortal emperors while the ninth waterway had fewer immortal emperors. Adhering to the principle of doing things easy first and difficult later, Ning Fan decided to set recovering the ninth waterway as his next goal. The ninth waterway was the second last pass, the Myriad Saints Pass. The reason why this pass was called the Myriad Saints Pass was to commemorate a heroic deed. Countless years ago, when an Eastern Heaven immortal emperor was guarding this pass, he was attacked by Dragon King Myriad Saint. Dragon King Myriad Saint was a famous old monster of the ninth waterway. He was very strong, and that Eastern Heaven immortal emperor was no match for him. However, that Eastern Heaven immortal emperor still decided to defend the pass with his life. In the end, he sacrificed himself to protect the other cultivators who were guarding the pass. Even though the famous Dragon King Myriad Saint killed that Eastern Heaven immortal emperor, one of his dragon horns was cut off by that immortal emperor. The wound was filled with resentment, and the broken horn could not be regrown until now. It was said that the reason why the formation of the Myriad Saints Pass was so powerful was because it had integrated the power of Myriad Saints' broken horn. Currently, the Divine Void Emperor and the other Eastern Heaven immortal emperors were guarding the Myriad Saints Pass. When Ning Fan arrived at the Myriad Saints Pass, he was surprised to find that the Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor, who had always been polite to him on the surface, actually came out of their pass with great enthusiasm just to welcome him. The Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor even took out countless rare and precious spiritual fruits and spiritual wine and held a grand banquet just to welcome Ning Fan. In the cultivation world, strength was the only thing that mattered. When Ning Fan was just a puny life immortal realm cultivator and a true immortal realm cultivator, the Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor did not put him in their eyes at all. They even humiliated themselves by bullying the weak and made things difficult for Ning Fan. Later on, with the protection of Great Emperor Ancient Chaos, the Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor became much more polite to Ning Fan. However, the source of their politeness was only because they respected the Ancient Chaos. Later on, because Ning Fan was on good terms with Xiang Bozi, he obtained the full support of the Godly Void Pavilion. As the pillar of the Godly Void Pavilion and the disciple of Xiang Bozi, the Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor became even more polite to Ning Fan. However, that kind of politeness still did not come from the bottom of their hearts. It was only until Ning Fan became the Sha Emperor and performed the magnificent feat of killing an immortal emperor during the Emperor Conferring Ceremony that the Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor genuinely regarded him as their peer for the first time. After that, Ning Fan went to the dark races alone and retreated unscathed. Ning Fan took part in the meeting of the Realm River and sent his troops to 11 different routes. He killed the immortal emperors of the foreign races time and time again. Recently, Ning Fan actually defeated a half-step saint and killed 8 immortal emperors all by himself. The Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor were unwilling to admit it, but they had no choice but to admit that the current Ning Fan's strength had far exceeded theirs. They could only look up to him in admiration. Today, even if the two emperors came out together to welcome Ning Fan alone, they no longer felt humiliated. Instead, they felt that this was how it should be. Ning Fan had the strength to make them treat him with respect. During the banquet, everyone toasted each other. Ning Fan was not a narrow-minded person. Since the Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor took the initiative to express their goodwill to him, he would not let them lose face. No matter what kind of grudges they had with each other in the past, they only had one identity at the moment. They were brothers who guarded the realm river together. They were comrades. In the face of righteousness, small grudges were not worth mentioning. Of course, with what happened in the past, it was impossible for Ning Fan to sincerely befriend the Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor. Compared to feigning civility with the Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor, he preferred to drink and chat merrily with LV Feng and Yun Lei. LV Feng and Yun Lei were both guest elders of the Divine Void Pavilion. Naturally, they would accompany the Divine Void Emperor and guard the ninth path. With the two of them drinking with Ning Fan did not feel that the banquet was boring at all. LV Feng and Yun Lei were his friends when he was still insignificant. Their sincerity towards each other was incomparable to the others. Of course, compared to drinking, Ning Fan was more concerned about the situation of the ninth path. At the bottom of the third path, he met the blood god of the foreign races. That cuttlefish which was as large as the starry sky weighed heavily on his heart. It was also because he had witnessed how terrifying that cuttlefish was that Ning Fan did not dare to underestimate the foreign races. He did not think that he was already invincible in the world. In order to reclaim the ninth path, he still needed to gather some information first. When Ning Fan asked about the situation of the ninth path, the experts of the Eastern Heaven at the scene naturally told him everything they knew. Great Emperor Shin Kong, whose cultivation base had fallen to the seventh tribulation realm, seemed to be trying to please Ning Fan. While toasting Ning Fan, he took the initiative to introduce the situation of the ninth path to him. This made many experts at the scene secretly despise Great Emperor Shin Kong's shamelessness. The things that Ning Fan had done before he became famous had already spread across the Eastern Heaven. Everyone knew that Great Emperor Shin Kong had bullied Ning Fan in the past. Now, he actually had the nerve to lower himself to please Ning Fan. Doesn't he feel ashamed? As the saying goes, the river flows east for 30 years and west for 30 years. Don't bully a young man because he is poor. Since younger brother Ning has asked about it, I will tell you about the situation of the ninth path. In the Vermilion Bird Pass, the main pass of the ninth path, the foreign races have stationed 10 million troops. Among them, there are 9 immortal emperors, 1 half-saint and 3 traitors of the Eastern Heaven. Younger brother Ning, you must know about the 3 traitors. They are Mo He, Gui Hua and Dong Ling. Among the 9 immortal emperors of the foreign races, 5 of them are at the 6th tribulation, 2 at the 7th tribulation and 2 at the 8th tribulation. The only half-saint of the foreign races is actually related to this Myriad Saints Pass. He is none other than the Myriad Saint Dragon King mentioned in the story. This person's abilities are very strong. Ordinary half-saints can't compare to him, especially his 7 heads technique, which is evil and terrifying. Legend has it that once he transforms into 7 heads, even a first-level quasi-saint would not have the confidence to destroy all of his heads. Besides, his heads seem to have a curse effect which can cause damage to the enemies who attack his heads. Whether that 7 heads technique is really that evil or not, I'm not sure. Because we have been fighting in the ninth path for tens of years, but no one has ever seen the Myriad Saint Dragon King transform into 7 heads. Everyone felt even more disdainful towards Great Emperor Shin Kong. They thought to themselves that Great Emperor Shin Kong was really thick-skinned. He kept calling Ning Fan, younger brother Ning. Was he not afraid that calling Ning Fan this way would shorten his lifespan? However, Ning Fan was not concerned about these minor details. He was more concerned about the Myriad Saint Dragon King and the 7 heads technique that Great Emperor Shin Kong mentioned. From the looks of it, this Myriad Saint Dragon King seems to be harder to deal with than that Wan Xingzi. By the way, I have been guarding the ninth path for tens of years. I once found an ancient cultivator's dwelling by chance. It seems to be left behind by the Eastern Heaven Ancient Emperor in the past. Fellow Taoist, are you interested? Seeing that Ning Fan was unmoved by his flattery, Great Emperor Shin Kong suddenly changed the topic and asked with a smile. Chapter 1138. Ning Fan was not interested in the so-called ancient immortal emperor's abode. The helpless thing was that Emperor Shen Kong, who had the title of Deputy Alliance Leader, kept on inviting him and dragging him to the ancient Emperor Cave abode to take a look. The Void Space Emperor and the others who attended the banquet were equally excited. They invited Ning Fan to explore the abode and claimed that there were many secret treasures and divine pills sealed in the abode. After Ning Fan goes there, they could give him some of them. This made Ning Fan very curious. Why were the immortal emperors at the banquet so enthusiastic and unanimously invited him to the abode to divide the treasures? Could this be a scheme with ulterior motives? Would these immortal emperors join hands to kill him after leading him to the abode? This conspiracy theory flashed in Ning Fan's mind. Immediately, he extinguished it and shook his head with a smile. He had experienced too many schemes in these years. Therefore, whenever he encounters something, he would always think the worst of others. However, the Realm River was in chaos now. These Eastern Heaven immortal emperors would not betray the Eastern Heaven at the same time to plot against him. Therefore, the possibility of this conspiracy theory was not high. He was just overthinking it. The motive of these Eastern Heaven immortal emperors was very simple. They probably just wanted to take the treasures in other people's abode to please him. Or perhaps, there were some treasures in the abode which Emperor Shen Space and the others could not access with their current strength. Thus, they wanted to borrow his strength to a certain extent. After figuring out the crux of the matter, Ning Fan casually accepted the invitation of Emperor Shen Space and the others. However, he did not explicitly promise them which day they would go to the abode. Ning Fan was more concerned about the situation of the battle in the ninth path. He did not want to pay attention to the abode for the time being. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. The weather in the Realm River was clear and refreshing. On this day, the 4 immortal emperors, the Void Space Sovereign, the Shen Space Sovereign, the Qi Camel Sovereign and the Ming He Child, suddenly visited him at the same time and invited him to take a look at the ancient sovereign's cave dwelling. Ning Fan was slightly speechless. Why are these people so interested in that abode? Seeing that he really could not brush them off, he nodded and accompanied the 4 emperors. The abode mentioned by the 4 emperors was not too far away from the Myriad Saints Pass. It was less than half a day's journey by water. The cave mansion was located at the back of the Myriad Saints Pass, within the protection of the Array Formation, and its location was very safe. There was no danger of being ambushed by the outsiders. The cave was located in an independent space. Due to the passage of time, a thin crack in space had appeared not long ago, and the monarchs happened to find it. This was an extremely ancient cavern space that had existed for an unknown number of years. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth within it was already somewhat decayed. However, the strange thing was that the might of the formation within the abode actually still retained 20% to 30%, and it hadn't been completely obliterated by the passage of time. It was rather miraculous. In the beginning, Ning Fan was not interested in this ancient sovereign's dwelling. However, after witnessing the uniqueness of this dwelling, his interest was finally piqued. The landscape of the cave abode was a boundless glacier. On top of the glacier, there were 8 enormous icebergs that towered into the clouds. They were like 8 giant guards that stood upright. On every ice mountain, an ancient emperor had once opened a cave abode. This place was indeed an ancient sovereign's dwelling space. However, it didn't belong to a single ancient emperor. Instead, it belonged to 8 ancient emperors. According to the research done by Divine Space Emperor and the others, these 8 immortal emperors should be people from the same era as the Eastern Sky Ancestor Emperor. The 8 of them were fellow disciples of the same sect. They were called the 8 Sons of Water sect by their contemporaries. There seem to be many ancient books of the Eastern Sky that mention these 8 immortal emperors. As for where this title came from, no one knew. According to the records of the ancient books, the most glorious achievement of these 8 immortal emperors was that they once defeated the Eastern Sky Ancestor Emperor, who was a peerless genius using the water elemental divine ability. Being able to defeat an outstanding genius like the Eastern Sky Ancestor Emperor was enough for them to be proud even if they relied on numbers. The 8 Sons of Water sect were quite capable. Unfortunately, no matter how strong they couldn't resist the passage of time. In the end, the 8 immortal emperors still fell in the long river of time. Only 8 cave abodes were left behind, witnessing the vicissitudes of the world. Each of the icebergs was covered with a large number of formations that possessed unfathomable power. As the owners of the 8 icebergs were different, the colors of the formations were also different. The 8 different colors of the icebergs reflected each other's brilliance in this place, making it look rather magnificent. Among the 8 icebergs, the formations of 5 of them had already been broken by Divine Space Emperor, and the others and their treasures were all taken. Unfortunately, there were still 3 that were beyond the capabilities of Divine Space Emperor and the others. Even until today, they still could not break through the formations. Instead, they had suffered a lot because of the formations. As such, these people began to have their own thoughts. After all, they couldn't take away the treasures of the last 3 icebergs. Thus, they might as well offer them to Ning Fan. Of course, if there were any treasures that Ning Fan did not fancy, they wouldn't mind sharing them with him. Ning Fan ate the meat while they drank the soup. It wasn't a bad idea either. Younger brother Ning has an outstanding reputation. We have admired him for a long time. However, we didn't have a way to befriend him. With younger brother Ning's capabilities, I believe it'll be as easy as flipping your hand to break the formations of the last 3 abodes. As long as younger brother Ning breaks the formations, the treasures of the last 3 icebergs will belong to younger brother Ning if they are useful to him. If it's the things that are useless to younger brother Ning, you, the white-robed king of hell, are exceedingly strong and you have a huge business. Of course, you'll have high standards. I'm sure there are many things that you won't fancy. You should at least let us get some of the soup, right? Divine Space Emperor and the others put on an extremely generous expression, as if bringing Ning Fan to this place was a great bargain for him. This made Ning Fan extremely speechless. He finally understood why these people were so eager to invite him to this place to have a look. It turns out that they want him to do something for them and then follow behind him to get some benefits. Divine Space Emperor and the others led the way and brought Ning Fan to an iceberg that was emitting black chi. Among the last 3 icebergs, this one had the weakest formations. It belonged to the 3rd son of the 8 disciples of Returning Water sect. As soon as Ning Fan and the others approached this iceberg, countless black icicles appeared out of nowhere and attacked Ning Fan and the others. Even though those icicles had been around for a long time, they still retained some of their power, which was enough to injure a weak immortal emperor. Even though Divine Space Emperor and the others had already experienced the power of these icicles, they were still a little flustered by them. The Void Space Emperor, Divine Space Emperor and the Red Camel Emperor were still fine, as all of them were experts of the 7th or 8th tribulation. Ming He Tongzi, on the other hand, was at a disadvantage. He was just a 6th tribulation expert. Even though he was prepared, he was still careless, and one of the icicles broke through his defensive ability and pierced his left shoulder. Ming He Tongzi was greatly shocked. He immediately pulled out the black icicles without any hesitation. Even though he moved quickly, a large amount of black pus and blood still flowed out of his wound. It was extremely rancid. Ming He Tongzi's face also turned pale because of the attack of a mere icicle. He actually suffered quite a serious injury. Even though the power of the formation of the ancient immortal emperors was greatly reduced, it could still easily injure immortal Emperor Doomsday. Is this the difference between the people of today and the people of the past? Everyone, please step back. I'll deal with these icicles. Ning Fan sighed and said to Ming He Tongzi and the others. What he said was indeed out of good intentions. Even though these few immortal emperors wanted to use him to break the formation, he did not want them to suffer too much damage. If these people were injured, the strength of the alliance of the Border River Alliance would decrease. For the sake of the overall situation, he did not mind taking all the dangers in this place for these people. Unfortunately, his good intentions sounded a little harsh to the other party's ears. Little brother Ning, you have underestimated us too much. Little brother, your strength is unparalleled, but we aren't weak either. Why would we be afraid of these black icicles? Don't mention the word, step back, again. Fellow Taoist Ming He's injury is just an accident. On the contrary, fellow Taoists should be more careful. These black icicles are extremely powerful. They are one of the ultimate techniques of the 8 disciples of water sect. As long as dozens of icicles attack at the same time, even a 7th or 8th tribulation immortal emperor would find it hard to resist. Our chances of success will be higher if we work together. Fellow Taoist, you mustn't underestimate the enemy. Divine Space Emperor and the others frowned. They felt that Ning Fan was looking down on them too much. He actually asked them to step back. Even though the purpose of this trip was to please Ning Fan, which one of them was not a prideful being? Who would be willing to be looked down upon by Ning Fan? Ning Fan frowned. Seeing that the 4 emperors were insistent, he no longer tried to persuade them. Facing the incoming countless icicles, he could only raise his tree of 7 treasures high up and brush it for thousands of times. All of a sudden, hundreds and thousands of black icicles were easily destroyed by the light of the 7 treasures tree. The process was too easy. Divine Space Emperor and the others widened their eyes. They were tongue-tied and could not close their mouths for a long time. Just a moment ago, they were blaming Ning Fan for looking down on them. Moreover, an attack of tens of icicles was enough to make a 7th or 8th tribulation immortal emperor find it hard to resist. However, at the next moment, Ning Fan told them with reality that these icicles were insignificant to him. He could destroy thousands of icicles with just a raise of his hand. All of a sudden, the pride of Divine Space Emperor and the others shattered. All of them felt a strong sense of defeat and helplessness. They knew that there was a gap between them and Ning Fan. However, they did not expect that the gap would be so huge. It was like a heavenly moat that could not be crossed between them. It seems like younger brother Ning can also easily break the formations of this place by himself. There is indeed no need for us to take action. The younger generation will surpass us in time. The Void Space Emperor said bitterly, as if he had aged a few million years in an instant. Divine Space Emperor and the others also looked like frosted eggplants. They could not muster up the slightest bit of momentum in front of Ning Fan. Seeing that he had defeated the proud and arrogant 4 emperors of the eastern sky with just a casual attack, Ning Fan sighed even more. He did not want to hurt the self-esteem of the 4 emperors too much. He forced a smile and comforted the 4 emperors. Only then did the 4 emperors regain their composure a little. However, the remaining formations were all broken by Ning Fan alone. The formations of the Black Ice Mountain had a total of 19 layers. The first layer was the attack of the black icicles. Ning Fan broke it in just a few moves. The second layer was the attack of the water poison. Ning Fan possessed the power of yin-yang poison. Thus, he was not afraid of this poison at all. On the other hand, Divine Space Emperor and the others were suffering under the attack of the water poison. If it wasn't for Ning Fan's help, some of them would have lost their lives. The third layer of the formations summoned a water giant with a 6th tribulation immortal emperor realm cultivation base. However, it was easily killed by Ning Fan's 7 treasures wondrous tree. Divine Space Emperor and the others were so shocked that they felt a chill run down their spines. They looked at Ning Fan as if they were looking at a ghost or a god. The 4th layer of the formations summoned a sky-covering giant wave that drowned the entire glacier. The force of the wave was so strong that it almost made the 4 emperors lose their balance. Their magic power was in a mess. Ning Fan, on the other hand, casually took out an unknown black iron needle. With just a point of the needle, all of the waves evaporated instantly. The 5th layer of the formation, the 6th layer of the formation, the 7th layer of the formation, Divine Space Emperor and the others gradually became numb. The formations that were extremely dangerous in their eyes were all broken by Ning Fan in just a few moves. Ning Fan's endless means were enough to deal with all kinds of situations. It dazzled them and eventually, they were convinced. If it was said that they felt shocked when they first saw Ning Fan's true strength, after seeing it for a long time, they became used to it and felt that it was supposed to be like this. Quietly, Divine Space Emperor and the others changed the way they addressed him. They no longer called him younger brother Ning but brother Ning. When facing Ning Fan, they no longer dared to be arrogant and rely on their seniority. Regarding this trip, they also did not dare to harbor the thought of fishing in troubled waters. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, all 19 layers of the Black Ice Mountain were broken by Ning Fan. Ning Fan entered the cave dwelling of the Black Ice Mountain and ransacked it. He found more than 10 bottles of pills, including 2 9 Revolutions Emperor pills. Unfortunately, more than half of their medicinal power had been lost. He also found 3 magic treasures. All of them were half-damaged innate magic treasures. He also found a jade slip which recorded a water elemental offensive ability called the river burial technique. After so many years, these pills and magic treasures actually did not completely lose their spiritual power. This surprised Ning Fan. This was considered extremely rare among the ancient cultivators' remains that he had seen. The 8 disciples of the water sect seemed to be very good at preserving things. The half-damaged innate magic treasures could be used to refine divine liquid. Even though more than half of the medicinal power of the pills had been lost, they were still edible. Of course, these pills were not very useful to Ning Fan. Ning Fan had seen the river burial technique. It was not a powerful ability. Its destructive power was not even 1/10 of the power of the River of Oblivion. Even if he learns it, it would just be an additional ability that he could integrate with the cross-shaped halo. Ning Fan decided to keep the magic treasures for his own use and give the pills to the others to share. However, none of them wanted Ning Fan's pills. It was not because these pills were not good. It was because they were unwilling and did not dare to take advantage of Ning Fan anymore. Seeing that the 4 emperors insisted on not accepting the pills, Ning Fan did not force them. He just made 4 copies of the jade slips and gave one to each of them. After that, he ignored the 4 of them and walked around the cave dwelling alone for the second time, trying to see if he had missed anything. Suddenly, he was surprised and stopped in front of a strange ice sculpture. It was a strange sculpture that was carved from profound ice. It was placed in the deepest part of the cave dwelling. He had no idea what it was used for. When he searched the cave for the first time, Ning Fan's attention was focused on the magic treasures, pills, and jade slips. Thus, he did not notice this strange sculpture. When he searched the cave for the second time, he finally noticed it. Moreover, he noticed that there seemed to be a pile of weathered grass ashes in front of the sculpture. Ning Fan squatted down and carefully observed the ashes. He found out that they were actually the remains of a praying mat after it was weathered. The sculpture was not finished. It only had the beginning. He could barely tell that it was the sculpture of a woman because her long hair reached her waist. Unfortunately, her face and body were not carved properly. However, there were still traces of incense power remaining on the sculpture. It was obvious that the owner of the cave had once kowtowed to it seriously. Even though the sculpture of the woman's body was not finished, judging from the general shape of the sculpture, the owner was not going to carve a pair of legs on her lower body but a fish tail. A woman with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a fish? Aphrodite's voice suddenly appeared in Ning Fan's mind. He thought to himself, could it be that this sculpture is going to carve a mermaid? Then, here comes the question. Why did the owner of this cave, the 3rd of the 8 disciples of the water sect, want to carve such a statue of a mermaid, and why did the owner want to kowtow to her? Seeing that Ning Fan was actually staring at the strange sculpture, Divine Space Emperor and the others asked with surprise. Is there something wrong with this sculpture? Could it be that fellow Taoist has discovered something from this sculpture? No, I haven't. I just feel that it's a little strange for a perfectly good cave to have such an unfinished sculpture of a woman. Ning Fan answered. What's so strange about it? All of the 5 cave dwellings that we have broken into previously had a similar sculpture of a woman whose face and body couldn't be seen clearly. This woman is probably the master of the 8 disciples of the water sect. That's why they could sincerely kowtow to her. Are there similar sculptures in the other cave dwellings as well? Ning Fan shook his head and suppressed the strange feeling in his heart. Then he turned around and walked out of the cave. The moment he walked out of the cave, he seemed to feel that the sculpture of the woman without any facial features smiled at him from behind. It was a bone-chilling smile. He suddenly turned his head and stared at the sculpture with a frown. Is there really something wrong with this sculpture? Divine Space Emperor asked. He checked the sculpture repeatedly, but of course, he could not find any problems. Be careful. I feel that there's something wrong with this place. Ning Fan transmitted his voice to him. Chapter 1139. Ning Fan vaguely felt that there was something wrong with this place, but he could not tell what it was. Hearing Ning Fan's words, Divine Space Emperor and the others felt chills down their spines. They checked the cave dwelling again and again. In the end, they exchanged glances with each other and smiled, thinking that Ning Fan was thinking too much. With their tens of millions of years of experience, they really couldn't see anything wrong with this place. Moreover, in their hearts, Ning Fan's strength was beyond their imagination. He was comparable to an ancient immortal king. Even if there was something wrong with this place, they firmly believed that Ning Fan would be able to resolve all problems. In the end, the four emperors did not take Ning Fan's words to heart. Since Brother Ning has already broken the array formation of this Black Ice Mountain's immortal cave, why don't you break the array formation of the other two ice mountains in one go? Those two caves belonged to the eldest and second of the Water Sect's 8 disciples. Third brother's cave abode already had a lot of gains, so the other two abodes would definitely have even greater gains. Forget about this statue, it will definitely be fine. Shall we quickly head to the next ice mountain? The Shun Space Emperor and the rest urged. The river burial technique that Ning Fan looked down upon was treated as a treasure by them. They only hoped that they could obtain more benefits from the other two icebergs. That was why they urged Ning Fan to quickly break the formations of the other icebergs. Ning Fan turned around. His eyes flickered with green light as he stared at the ice sculpture and carefully examined it. Unfortunately, no matter how he probed, he could not find anything unusual about the ice sculpture. In the end, he could only suppress the discomfort in his heart and leave the cave, following Emperor Shen Kong and the others to the next ice mountain. After the time it takes for 2 incense sticks to burn, Ning Fan broke the formation of the other purple ice mountain and collected all the treasures inside. At the same time, Ning Fan discovered another ice sculpture of a lady that only had the head of the sculpture carved on it. The fewer icebergs with intact formations, the more uncomfortable Ning Fan felt. He did not know where these feelings of discomfort came from. Subconsciously, he was reluctant to destroy the formation of the last ice mountain. His instincts told him that it was inappropriate to do so. However, in order to obtain more treasures, Divine Space Emperor and the others forcefully dragged him to attack the last ice mountain. The last ice mountain was a blood-red ice mountain. It belonged to the eldest of the Gui Shui sect's 8 disciples. After the time it takes for 2 incense sticks to burn, this blood-red ice mountain was also destroyed by Ning Fan. When the last iceberg was broken, the entire world of glaciers began to shake slightly. Ning Fan's discomfort grew stronger. He did not immediately enter the last cave dwelling to search for treasures. He was extremely concerned about the swaying of the glacier world and advised Shen Kong Di and the rest, "My uneasiness is not unfounded. There's definitely something here that we don't know about. Don't rush into the cave dwelling to search for treasures. Give me some time and let me find the source of the uneasiness in this place." It seems that Brother Ning has experienced a lot of life and death crises in the Boundary River over the years. That's why you're so cautious in everything. Brother Ning can rest assured, this place is just an abandoned immortal cave. Where would there be any danger? Your uneasiness is just an illusion. This last cave belongs to the eldest of the Gui Shui sect's 8 disciples, so the treasures inside must be more abundant than the other caves. Since the formation has been broken, let's quickly enter the cave and search for treasures. There's nothing to worry about. That's right. If you don't take what the heavens have given you, you will be punished instead. Since we've entered the treasure mountain, how can we not take it? The Shen Space Emperor and the rest did not think much of it. They smiled as they entered the cave and began to search for treasures. Not long after, the sound of everyone's laughter could be heard from within the cave. Everyone, look at what I've found. There's actually an incomplete 10 transformation ancestral pill here. Ancient Grand Cultivator Level Divine Skill. This is an Ancient Grand Cultivator Level Divine Skill. What's sealed in this rusty box? Why can't it be opened? What kind of iron box is this? Even the innate magical treasures can't open it. It's so strange. Hiss. There are 8 perfectly preserved innate magical treasures here. Don't bother about the iron box. Come and take a look. What? 8 perfectly preserved innate magical treasures. Is fellow Taoist Ming He joking? Yes, it's real. The positions of these 8 innate magical treasures seem a little strange. Forget it. Let's take these innate magical treasures first. Who cares if the positions are strange or not? Oh, we're rich. We actually obtained so many innate magical treasures. We're rich. We're really rich this time. No one had expected that the last cave dwelling would have such a great harvest. They had picked up 8 innate magical treasures in one go. Almost without any hesitation, God Emperor Shen Kong and the others immediately kept the 8 innate magical treasures. Ning Fan was still observing the strangeness of this place outside the cave dwelling. As soon as he heard that there were 8 innate magical treasures in the cave dwelling, he immediately shuddered. All the vague uneasiness in his heart seemed to have found the source. Without any hesitation, Ning Fan directly rushed into the cave dwelling and advised God Emperor Shen Kong and the others. Everyone wait. Don't touch those innate magical treasures first. As soon as he entered the cave dwelling, Ning Fan saw a strange scene. In the deepest part of the cave dwelling, there was also a statue of a lady that only had a rough outline carved on it. Around the statue, there was an extremely powerful seal and 8 innate magical treasures were placed in different directions, firmly sealing the statue of the lady. As soon as Ning Fan saw the layout of the seal inside the cave dwelling, he seemed to have confirmed something. His expression changed. However, what surprised him was that even though he had already spoken out to stop the 4 emperors from taking the innate magical treasures in this place, the 4 emperors acted as if they did not hear him at all. They actually destroyed the seals around the statue and forcefully took away the 8 innate magical treasures. Not good. Ning Fan thought to himself. This is bad. This group of idiotic teammates has really done something stupid this time. They shouldn't have touched the innate magical treasures in this place. Can't they tell that there's something wrong with these innate magical treasures? At this moment, Ning Fan completely figured out where the uneasiness came from. He figured out what was going on with the 8 icebergs standing tall in this place. He figured out why there were 8 innate magical treasures in this cave dwelling and a statue being sealed inside. He understood everything now. Unfortunately, it was a little too late. There are so many innate magical treasures here. We're rich. We're rich. The eyes of Shen Space Emperor and the others were dull and their faces were filled with greed. They were deeply immersed in the joy of obtaining the 8 innate magical treasures and could not extricate themselves from it. Holding the innate magical treasures in their hands, they kept repeating the same sentence as if they were possessed. Ning Fan let out a long sigh. Only now did he notice that the expressions of Shen Space Emperor and the others were extremely abnormal. It was as if they had been bewitched by some kind of power. There was actually a trace of extremely obscure and powerful bewitching power in the surrounding air. It must have been this bewitching power that bewitched them, causing them to break the seals and take away the innate magical treasures without permission. If it wasn't because these people were also his comrades who were guarding the eastern heaven, Ning Fan really wanted to scold them for being unable to accomplish anything but capable of ruining things. At once, he shouted angrily, "Wake up!" Ning Fan used 13,500 tribulation worth of magic power to shout. The might of his shout was comparable to the roar of a first-level quasi-saint. It directly dispersed the bewitching power in the surroundings. Shen Space Emperor and the others shuddered. As if they had just woken up from a dream, their expressions changed. That was close. We seemed to have been bewitched by some kind of power. As soon as we entered the abode, we couldn't help but want to take away the innate magical treasures that are sealed in this place. There is indeed something wrong with this place. Who is it? Who is bewitching us and trying to break the seals here? Damn it. Since there is a seal here, there must be something that is sealed here. After we break the seals, we better not let any evil things out. I hope we didn't make a huge mistake. The faces of the four emperors were filled with anger and shame. They were not fools. If they were in a clear-headed state and saw a strange statue being sealed by 8 innate magical treasures, how would they dare to touch it? Hee. What responded to Shin's Space Emperor and the others was an extremely eerie and horrifying high-pitched laughter of a woman. It spread from the bottom of the boundless glacier all the way to the top of the glacier. That voice carried an unimaginable aura force. It was actually uttered by a first-level quasi-saint. Quickly put the 8 innate magical treasures back to their original positions. Ning Fan's expression changed and he gave an order that left no room for refusal. Shen's Space Emperor and the others were all extremely intelligent people. Previously, they were just bewitched by the woman. That was why they recklessly kept the 8 innate magical treasures. Now that they heard Ning Fan's words, they immediately put the magic treasures back to their original positions and tried to reseal the strange statue of the woman. However, it was already too late. At this moment, the entire world of glaciers began to shake. At first, the shaking was very subtle. However, as time passed by, the shaking became more and more violent. In just the time of 10 breaths, the shaking of the world had actually intensified to the point where even immortal emperors found it hard to stand still. The expressions of Shin's Space Emperor and the other 3 emperors turned darker than the last. At this moment, the spatial power of this world of glaciers was extremely chaotic and violent. It was as if the entire heaven and earth was rotating at high speed. The 4 emperors had to use all of their magic power in order to barely stand still while the world was rotating. Moreover, because the heaven and earth were rotating too violently, the rays of light between heaven and earth refracted into strange rainbow bridges. When the number of those rainbows increased to a certain extent, a massive 7-colored power suddenly shot out from the rainbows, turning the 8 ice mountains into dust. Then, it split the entire land of glaciers into 2 halves, revealing the endless ice abyss that was sealed under the glaciers. Ning Fan and the others barely escaped from the cave on the ice mountain. They did not turn into dust along with the cave. At the moment when they escaped from the collapse of the ice mountain, the white shadow of an ancient woman also floated out from the bottom of the endless ice abyss. She was singing an ancient song in an eerie manner. Her long hair fluttered in the chilly wind while her fishtail swayed in the storm. The water immortal lake where the mermaids live. Ever since the immortal sovereign crossed the lake, the people of the world no longer recognized the true immortal Confucian. Spiritual pills were thrown into the lake. The lake water was as clear as water. The mermaids treasured it so much that they stored it in the bright moon pot. The mermaids drank the full moon at night. The moonlight turned into pearls in their eyes. They held a lotus leaf in their hands. The pearls on the plate could not even be compared to mercury. The people of the world have no immortal intent. Their hearts are rippling, cooking dragons and cannons every day. How can they sprinkle their hearts and warm their bodies? Sprinkle their hearts and warm their bodies. They must drink the bright moon pearl of the mermaids. The water immortals have already left on the carps. Throughout the night, the lotus blossoms with red tears. The song was filled with endless charm. As soon as the song began, even though Shin Kong and the others were already prepared for it, they were still bewitched. Their eyes were filled with confusion and they fainted one after another on the glacial continent where the tectonic plates were broken. Ning Fan was the only one who was not affected by the song. His expression was as calm as still water. He no longer cared about Shin Kong and the others who were holding him back. In a flash, he flew into the sky and stood in midair, staring coldly at the ancient woman who was floating in midair. It was a mermaid with a sickly pale complexion. Her fishtail was covered with white scales that glistened with silver light. Her body was emitting the massive chi of a first-level quasi-saint. Even though she had been sealed by the 8 disciples of the water sect for countless years, her chi was still extremely strong. It did not diminish at all and it gave Ning Fan a strong aura. This woman was an expert at the same level as Xiang Bozi. She should not be underestimated. That woman was indescribably beautiful. For some unknown reason, she looked extremely similar to Aphrodite. Even her chi was almost the same. If Ning Fan did not know that Aphrodite was currently imprisoned in the profound Yin world, he would almost think that this woman was Aphrodite. The woman's beautiful eyes were filled with indescribable coldness. When she saw that Ning Fan was not affected by her siren song, her brows immediately sank. However, when she saw Ning Fan's appearance, she felt a little doubtful for some reason. After remaining silent for a moment, she asked, "Junior, have I seen you somewhere before?" Ning Fan frowned. He did not know why she would ask such a question. He then answered, "It should be our first time meeting." "First time meeting, huh? It's really an illusion. I've never seen you before." The woman shook her head and suppressed the doubt in her heart. Since Ning Fan was not someone she knew, there was no need for her to show any mercy. Immediately, her killing intent was like the Milky Way pouring down from the 9 heavens. She sneered, "Pumph, you're really impressive. You're just an immortal king realm cultivator, but you're actually able to block my siren song. It seems like you're not on the same level as those useless immortal emperors. Senior, who are you?" Ning Fan was not afraid of the woman's immense killing intent and asked indifferently, "Puma, I'm a pitiful person. A pitiful person who is trapped in a dream and can't wake up. At first, I thought that I would be suppressed by the 8 sons of the water sect in my dream for the rest of my life. Who would have thought that there would be a group of fools who accidentally barged into this sealed glacier and broke the 5 sealing formations of the ice mountains in succession? Those fools did not know about the seals of this place. They actually wanted to break all the seals here in order to obtain the treasures. However, they didn't know that their actions might release me. Unfortunately, they were too weak. 3 of the ice mountains formations were beyond their abilities. They couldn't break them even after spending tens of years. You're not bad though. You actually broke the remaining 3 ice mountains formations as soon as you appeared and released me. From this point of view, you're my great benefactor who saved me from the seals. It would be inexcusable if I don't give you some rewards. What kind of rewards do you want to give me, senior?" Ning Fan became extremely vigilant. He did not think that the other party really wanted to give him any rewards. It was because the other party's killing intent had already locked onto him without concealing it. Of course, it's to grant you death. You don't know, but the thing that I love to do the most in my life is to repay kindness with enmity and repay kindness with enmity. The female quasi-saint let out a shrill laugh. Her laughter sounded like a ferocious ghost coming for Ning Fan's life. All of a sudden, her body exploded, turning into a large amount of bubbles and dissipating. Almost at the same time when she turned into bubbles, Ning Fan's vision darkened. A fish-tailed lady appeared out of nowhere in front of him. The lady's movement technique was too fast. Before Ning Fan could react, she had already appeared in front of him. Her palm lightly landed on Ning Fan's chest. Although it seemed weak, it carried the immense power of a quasi-saint's attack. All of a sudden, Ning Fan felt as if he had been hit by hundreds or thousands of cultivation planets. He spurted out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying away by the lady's attack. When he finally stabilized his body, he was already severely injured. Who told this lady to sneak attack so quickly? He didn't even have the time to activate his eternal true body. If he did, he probably wouldn't be injured. However, even though I was sneakily attacked by this lady, she won't have a good time either. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with a cold light. A hint of calculation flashed across his eyes. Seeing that her full-force attack actually failed to kill a mere immortal king of Dream Realm, the lady was extremely surprised. After that, her killing intent skyrocketed and she laughed even more happily. Interesting. This is really interesting. It's good that I can't kill you with a single attack. If I can kill you in a single attack, I won't be able to play with you anymore. Hiss. What's going on? Just as the lady was about to attack Ning Fan again, her beautiful face suddenly changed and she coughed out a mouthful of black blood. She was actually poisoned without her knowing. Impossible. I just gave you a palm attack. How could you plant such a strong poison into my body during such a short period of physical contact? What kind of poison is this? It actually has a trace of the power of the 3rd step. This isn't a poison that a mere immortal king can possess. Who are you to the great sage flame toad? Ning Fan sneered. He activated his eternal true body and the cross-shaped halo at the same time. A golden flame giant that was surrounded by halos suddenly appeared in front of the lady. He did not answer the lady's question because he also did not know who the great sage flame toad that the lady mentioned was. Considering that he obtained the saint poison from an immortal emperor of the fire toad clan in the past, Ning Fan inwardly guessed that the so-called great sage flame toad was probably the ancestor of that immortal emperor of the fire toad clan. He was the true owner of that drop of saint poison, hiss? The incipient saint ring? That's not right. This cross-shaped black halo isn't the incipient saint ring. The lady's eyesight was extremely sharp. She could vaguely see that Ning Fan's cross-shaped halo had some kind of connection with the incipient saint ring of the third step. All of a sudden, her fear towards Ning Fan rose to an unprecedented level. She no longer looked down on him just because he was an immortal king. She sneered. So what if you're the descendant of the great sage flame toad? Since we met in the dream realm, what's the harm in killing you? It just so happens to be the opportunity for me to break the dream realm. Karma shot. The lady temporarily suppressed the saint poison in her body. She no longer dared to engage in close combat with Ning Fan. She displayed her ability and summoned a golden bow. Without saying a word, she shot 3 arrows at Ning Fan. 1 arrow to the top of the spirit, 1 arrow to the heart, 1 arrow to the dantian. Ning Fan was extremely familiar with this scene. That day, Afro also shot at him in the same way. What made Ning Fan feel slightly strange was that the lady's expression when she shot the arrows was very similar to Afro's. In the past, Afro was just a half-step quasi-saint. Thus, the 3 arrows she shot did not bring Ning Fan any life-threatening danger. However, the 3 arrows in front of him were different. They were shot by a true first-step quasi-saint with their full strength. Thus, they were not to be underestimated. Explode! Ning Fan did not plan to give the lady the chance to shoot the 3 arrows. He formed a hand seal and a trace of extremely obscure chaotic world multicolored light suddenly erupted from the lady's body. It was unexpected. When Ning Fan was struck by the lady's palm just now, not only did he seize the opportunity to plant the saint poison in her body, he also mixed a trace of the chaotic world purple light's bewitching power into the poison. The saint poison was just a cover. Ning Fan did not expect to kill this first-step quasi-saint with just a trace of the saint poison. He just wanted to use the saint poison to attract her attention. As expected, the lady's attention was attracted by the saint poison and she neglected the chaotic world purple light that had sneaked into her body. It was the brand new chaotic world purple light that Ning Fan condensed after combining the bewitching techniques of the 2 peerless figures, the ancient chaos great emperor and Shizihua. It was what Ning Fan relied on to capture Afro in a single move. Now, it had become his biggest reliance to deal with the first-step quasi-saint in front of him. If this first-step quasi-saint was a man, Ning Fan would have to fight a hard battle and he would most likely be defeated in the end. Fortunately, the enemy was a lady. She gave Ning Fan the chance to use his bewitching technique. As a trace of chaotic world purple light exploded in the lady's body, the chaotic power of the purple light instantly turned into a large bewitching technique net, trapping the lady who was caught off guard. So what if you're a first-step quasi-saint? In terms of the density of your magic power, Ning Fan was already comparable to a first-step quasi-saint. Being trapped in the large bewitching technique net that Ning Fan cast with all his magic power, even if the female quasi-saint had a profound cultivation base, all of her magic power was sealed by Ning Fan in an instant, turning her into a pitiful fish trapped in the net. Both of her hands struggled in the net while her tail kept kicking. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could not escape from the bewitching technique net that Ning Fan had set up. Just a moment ago, the lady was still wearing an arrogant expression. At the next moment, her aura force weakened and she said softly to Ning Fan, "Let me out." Her tone was 70% angry and 30% shy. She was angry because she, a dignified quasi-saint, actually became a fish in the net of a mere immortal king because of a moment of carelessness. She was embarrassed because she had a similar nightmare before. In the dream, she was repeatedly trapped by a white-robed man whose face could not be seen clearly. Then she licked and humiliated him wantonly. In the end, her tears were snatched away by him. Quasi-saint? So what if you're a quasi-saint? If you want to kill me, you have to be prepared to become a fish in my net. You're the second mermaid that I've caught. I don't care if you're a quasi-saint or not. From today onwards, you will be my vessel to produce the tears of the mermaid. Ning Fan sneered. Since this lady wanted to kill him, he naturally would not show any mercy to her. So what if I've caught you? Falling into your hands is just another nightmare. I, Afro, will never beg for mercy from you. Afro? You said your name is Afro? Ning Fan frowned. He vaguely had a strange feeling. Why is the mermaid that I've caught this time also called Afro? Not only does she look similar to Afro, but she also has the same name? Is this a coincidence, or is there another reason? All of a sudden, Ning Fan's interest in investigating the mermaid that was sealed in the glacier of this place was aroused. His subconscious told him that this mermaid really seemed to have some kind of connection with Afro. It was a connection that he was still far from understanding at the moment. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.